Thank you.
Now, shall
Anybody
I
want a
go
bath-
into?
restroom
Could we
break,
maybe
or
do it after public comments since people
Yes,
have
you're
waited?
right. I'm sorry. Okay, let's do that. Let's get going on this.
Let me, 1 second. The mayor has called the second budget hearing meeting to order. Roll
Okay.
call, Mayor Davey,
Here.
Councilmember Laredo,
Here.
Councilmember London, Vice Mayor McCormick,
He's here.
Councilmember Moss, and Councilmember Petros, and Councilmember Segura.
Here,
Thank
here.
you. We do have a quorum, Mayor. If you may please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item, Mayor's brief comments by council.
Okay. Anybody? All right, let's move on to public comments, please. All right. Oh, there's more. Jan Dillo, you've waited patiently.
Oh, it's just we have.
Thank you. Jan Dillo, 350 West Heather Drive. I've lived here for 20 years. This is the first time I've ever done this, so I'm a little nervous.
Thank you for coming.
I came to talk about one of the budget items, and that is the resiliency officer. I understand that in the budget, we have a pilot program for a resilience officer for 20 hours a week. I disagree with this. I think that we need a resiliency officer on our staff. I would not be opposed to having one who was 50% of the time with us and 50% of the time with another municipality like Aventura or whatever, or Pinecrest, whoever else. But I think that this is a long-term problem, and I think that we need to take control and show, look, you've been talking about the rating agencies. We need to show them as well that this is an important issue for us. And here's why. The Union of Concerned Scientists performed a national study in 2015 based on data from 2014. It was cities and towns and areas the most at risk for chronic flooding by state. In Florida, obviously the most vulnerable state, Key Biscayne was about the 5th community that was on that list. What that meant was they did 3 scenarios, and under the intermediate scenario, 10% of Key Biscayne, of our usable area, would be chronically flooded by 2035. That's 16 years from now. It's not 30, it's not 50, it's not the turn of the century. It's right around the corner. Under a more dramatic scenario, 12% of Key Biscayne would be chronically flooded by 2035, and 26% would be chronically flooded by 2045. We need to fund a real resilience officer now, and we need to accelerate long-term resiliency planning and implementation. Secondly, I think we should accelerate the resiliency planning process so that we can petition any possible federal agency for help and issue debt to tackle climate change projects. If we delay, there's a higher risk of federal funds having dried up and our ratings going down and us being crowded out of the bond market. I'd like to mention that Miami, who does have a chief resiliency officer, has been extremely successful in getting money from FEMA. In fact, they got a $1.6 million for emergency backup generators. If we had a resiliency officer on our staff that was doing everything that they needed to be doing, they could pay for themselves by just getting a grants like that. Going back to the rating agencies, and I know that there was a lot of discussion about that. All 3 major agencies in 2017, Moody's, Fitch, and S&P, issued reports warning state and local governments that their exposure to climate risk could affect the municipalities' credit ratings. That was 2 years ago. In July of this year, Moody's underscored its commitment by purchasing a controlling stake in a climate change and hazard measurement company. So far, they have been okay with just listening to municipalities saying, we have a plan, this is our plan, and we're going to go forward with it. That is not going to always be the case. And the reason is it's driven by investors. According to Smith Research and Gradings, in just 1 year, from 2018 to 2019, investors' odds of citing climate change as important to the municipal bond ratings more than tripled, from 6% to 19% in 1 year. Obviously, this is a much bigger issue. Having a resiliency officer is also going to be important because at some point the rating agencies are going to start, they benchmark. They look at ratings, they look at the numbers, everybody looks at the numbers, but they also look at qualitative issues. If you go to the rating agencies though, and you have a part-time resiliency person and you don't have a long-term plan of what you're going to do, it is going to hurt you eventually. If we haven't had our ratings looked at since 2015, and all of these, and the rating agencies are since 2017 saying it's important, we need to look at it, in my opinion, and we need somebody looking at it that is an employee of the village.
Jan, I gotta cut you off. We're at
Okay.
9 minutes.
Okay.
But thank you. I appreciate your sentiment. Yeah. Jan, if you want to send the rest by email to the council, I think we'd appreciate it. Thank you. Lynn Paisley?
Good evening. I was going to say good afternoon, but it has turned into evening. My name's Lynn Paisley. I live at 345 Redwood Lane, and I'm here to ask again for your support for the solar hub for the athletic field that Mast Academy and the village shares. As we are on Barrier Island, and we will be on the front line to feel the effects of climate change, it's only fitting that we should also be in the vanguard of dealing with those effects while we still can. Funding the Mast Solar Hub would send a powerful message, a message to our students. We have 3 of them here today, as well as to their parents, that the Village Council is ready to act, to take action on this critical issue at our school, in our community. If we're destined to be on the front lines of climate change, we need to show our kids that we know how to lead and that we're ready to act. This project is not just environmentally responsible. I know that you've seen the numbers for the project that Michelle Drucker has run by you before in previous meetings. It's also a fiscally responsible thing to do. And I'm sorry that our Green Champions aren't here with us, but as you'll hear from some of our students, they're up in Washington, D.C., receiving a national award for their efforts. And they're also learning how to lobby government in the time that they're up there. They've met with congressmen, they've been into senators' offices, and I would hope that when they come back, they could have a positive response from this village council to show them how our local government really can work to start addressing this issue in a meaningful way that will be a symbol as well to all of our kids. I've even, I've taught some of your kids. I'm sure I will teach more of your kids. I even had an Ed London once upon a time.
Oh my God. Are you
I
still
did.
around?
Yes, I did, and I'm still around. Not this Ed London. But I just really think that if we can start addressing this in an actual, real way, that it will say something to the kids who are going to be leaders, and it will say something to their parents as well that will begin to spread in the community. It will be a very visible action for us to take, for you to take. I would love to be able to go back to my classes tomorrow and tell them that you guys were with us and that you had our backs on this issue. The other thing that I wanted to say, just because Pat Woodson is at home with laryngitis and she can't speak for herself, she is trying to get organization Youth Lead Change started in this community. And it's to empower students. It's empowering teens to become leaders, the kind of leaders that I think that you'll find our students at Mast are already working towards becoming. Thank you.
Thank you. Ellie Rania.
You all didn't realize how young I was to go to Mast.
Hi, good evening. Mr. Mayor Davey and council members, my name is Ellie Reyna, Miami resident and 10th grade Mast Academy student. I'm here to ask you to support the Green Champions budget request to fund the solar test hub at Mast Academy Athletic Field. At this moment, some of my fellow Green Champions are currently in Washington, D.C. for a meeting with their representatives and Mast to receive a Green Apple Award. I'm here to ask the village to support this proposal. We need solutions on how to secure our future, especially as a coastal community. Our progress now will have a large impact later, but we need your support. We hope you will partner with us in this effort and approve the funding for an investment in solar panels for the Master Academy athletic field. Thank you for your time and this opportunity.
Thank you for coming. Felipe Paoletti? What's your name?
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Felipe Paoletti, and I'm a 9th grade Master Academy student. I'm here to ask you to support the Green Champions budget request to fund the solar test hub at Master Academy Athletic Field. The entire energy sector is undergoing a transformation, and solar power is one of the keys to a clean energy future. Every day, the sun gives off far more energy than we need to power anything on Earth. Solar energy is renewable, carbon dioxide free, and has low operating costs on the long run. I'm asking you to please partner with us since there's no planet B, and act consciously not only about us now, but in the future generation also. Thank you.
Thank you. Holly Thorpe, is it Thorpe?
Hi, my name is Holly Thorpe, and I'm a 7th grader at Master Academy, a Green Champion, and a Key resident. I am also here to ask you for your support and partnership in our solar panel project, because I know that reducing CO2 is crucial in fighting climate change. We are working hard to become the first net zero school in Florida, one project at a time, and we need your partnership to achieve our goal to reduce CO2 by installing these solar panels, which will also reduce the electricity bill. We need to get them now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ceci Sanchez, another student at Master Academy.
Along with me?
Yeah, no.
Ceci Sanchez, 260 Cypress Drive. Again, I want to say, number one, right after Hurricane Andrew, I started to work at the Key Biscayne Library, and at that time, we formed actually a foundation, and the village had a grant program. I had to come, and I applied. The village gave me $10,000. I did all the paperwork. It didn't kill me. It was not easy. This was Sam Kissinger, who was not an easy person to get along with. I had to use my credit card. Ed took me to flea markets. We had tools lent by Key Colony since he was a manager in Phase 4. It was firemen helped us move the plants from the square. People gave me money for soil. I had $5,000 checks given to me, $10,000 checks sent to me, from $5 to $10,000. Then they started asking for naming rights, and that's where it stopped. But on monuments and things in the library. But you had that program a long time ago until Hugh O'Reilly, former council member, said he would veto any more of that. But people donated. We did a charitable, whatever it was called. I had the support of some Rotarians that helped me with the accounting, but it happened. I want to say thank you again. After that, we formed a Village Beautification Foundation. This was about 1995. 3 years later, Islander News article, we gave up. We had a nice group of people. We gave up trying to work with City Hall in getting our island spruced up as we expected. I thank you. This is 5 managers. Finally, you're approving that we are going to get a horticulturist arborist. My hopes are that if the amount that you put in the budget is not enough, you're going to find the money to fund that position, please. And we're gonna see that gazebo fixed up, and we're gonna start seeing changes here. Please, please. I thank you, and you'll see me again, and you'll get some more pictures, and I'll bombard you with it, but we can do it. Thank you.
Keep going, Ceci.
You,
Thank you.
Ceci.
And last but not least, Antonio Camejo.
Antonio Camejo, 151 Crandon Boulevard. I wanted to basically ask a question, and please interrupt me if I misstate something. I understand that we have a line item in the budget for the library. I'm neither against it nor for it because I don't know what it is, because I understand that there has not been a public presentation of what this involves, and it's well over $1 million, I believe. And I think the question I have about it is one of process. I think it's very important, anything that we do in the village, that we should reach out to affected members of the community. I'm on 2 boards in Key Colony. The library was a gift by the developer at Key Colony, Fritz Scharenberg. There's a trustee that's involved. And I get the impression that in order to come up with a number for a budget item, that there's been a lot of discussion going on between the village somehow and the county. The county has taken legal action to move against the Fininvest trust deed and to essentially rule it null and void, which would have, I think, a very dramatic impact on Key Colony. And all of its residents, because that agreement was basically was part of the sales pitch that was given to buyers at Key Colony, that Fritz Scharenberg had taken the sales office, given it to the village of Key Biscayne and the county for a library, because the Mathesons refused to give Calusa Park as a site for a library. So Fritz Scharenberg stepped up to the plate and said, here it is. However, this can only be used for a library, for nothing else, and if you ever use it for anything else, it reverts back to Fininvest. Well, Fininvest was the developer at Key Colony. Fininvest dissolves and turns over all its condominium assets to Key Colony. So I think it's very important that going forward, anything with a library, and by the way, just for the record, I'm an avid reader of real books. Every year, my company gives a gift to all our financial advisors nationwide and internationally. We give them physical books to read on important topics of current interest. So, big supporter of a library, big supporter of books. That's not the issue. The issue is that we have in the process engagement with the community, and that we involved the stakeholders in the community that are involved with the library. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So
I know
I would like to
Councilmember Petros wanted to make a quick comment because she has been spearheading the library effort.
First of all, Tony, thanks for coming up and commenting so that I could hopefully clear up what's going on to the whole community, and also speak to some of the things that you stated that you were concerned about. The county actually did what's called a declarative action. I'm going to let Chad speak specifically to that, but it was not with the intent to actually change that restriction in any way, shape, or form. They were concerned a little bit about the language of it, and if they were to go try to make improvements to this existing library, that it would violate that. They actually kept the language in there to keep it as a restriction, and in order for us to enter into discussions about updating that library, they wanted that step to happen first. And we did speak about that probably 6 to 8 months ago up here, which was that we weren't going to have any more discussions until the county felt comfortable that they were in a good position to have those discussions. And then we would absolutely engage the public. The budget this year had $1,000 placed in it, more as a placeholder, if in fact we were able to have those discussions. The county's been very open with our management, the manager, telling them where they are in the process, and it sounds like they could get in a good position to have a discussion to do a new updated library on that spot, not a large thing that's a multi-purpose building. It's meant to be a library. There have been many discussions about libraries over the years. You wrote an op-ed in Concern about what was the discussion. But I think once this issue is cleared up, and Chad will speak to it real quickly about the legal component of this, it wasn't the county trying to do anything behind our backs. And in fact, they've been in communication, the director of the library, with me through every step of the way. I'm happy to speak with you more on this off the record, but I want people to know that they're not trying to do anything nefarious, and we as a council can't really have a discussion till they're in a position to have that discussion with us.
Thank you.
Well,
Attorney?
Chad, can you just talk specifically about the deck action?
Sure. The deck action filed by the county, specifically the relief that they sought was that they're not bound by the section of the warranty deed requiring the approval of an architectural review committee prior to making any changes to the external appearance of any of the existing structure, and for any such other relief to court is appropriate and necessary. But their purpose was to eliminate that requirement to go to this committee, because the committee could not be formed because they couldn't find the people to form it. So that's our understanding.
And ideally, we would want to build a library that was up to our current codes, that could withstand, be more resilient, and be all of these things that we're talking about for all buildings, if in fact we're able to do that.
Councilmember Lurie, you want to make
Yeah,
a point?
I just want to, first of all, congratulate her. She's devoted a lot of time and effort to this thing and building for a solution. And it's like acquiring public parks, property for parks. So we have to keep it at a certain level of, not confidentiality, but low key. But I agree with Mr. Camejo that on the policy thing, and notwithstanding the legal restriction, we have, again, I know you're tired of me hearing this, Madam Manager, we have a communications problem. And so until we fix that, he should have, and the people who live in Key Colony, more information, notwithstanding the legal restrictions about the concept. So I think this is an opportunity to maybe start correcting the issue of communicating with our citizens better. But you've done a great job in moving this forward, and sorry that this misunderstanding is out there, but I think it's legitimate.
Madam Clerk?
Next item. It's a resolution of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, adopting the final millage rate of the Village of Key Biscayne.
I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, are we going to take a break? I apologize, I ran through our break. Does everybody want a little 5-minute break we call them bio breaks?
We can all laugh.
Remember that. We'll be back in 5. Don't go anywhere.
This is,
I desperately have to go to the bathroom.
All right.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The second budget hearing has been reconvened. The next item, Mayor, if I may, is a resolution of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, adopting the final millage rate of the Village of Key Biscayne for the fiscal year commencing October 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2020, pursuant to Florida Statute 200.065, trim bill providing for an effective date.
Moved. So I'll move to table this?
Yeah, so let me just kind of explain so we're all on the same page. Under Florida law, you're required to vote on the millage first and then the budget. However, in past practice in the village councils wanted to discuss the budget first, and then while you're still on the millage. So we have, through practice, tabled the millage, and then we go to the budget, open it up, discuss it, table the budget, and then go back, reopen the millage, and then vote on the millage, vote on the budget. The other thing, towards the end of the night, I know the manager was going to speak to us, but I'll take the liberty to do it now. Because you guys may change certain items in the budget, which may affect the village, and the village may move, we're going to ask that there be a short recess once all the business is concluded, so we can get the appropriate millage rate and the appropriate percentage increase over the rollback rate that we have to read out loud, which is required by law also.
Move to table.
Okay. I already moved to table.
Oh, you did? Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, on to the second reading of an ordinance of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, adopting the budgets for the fiscal year commencing October 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2020, pursuant to Florida Statute 200.065, Trim Bill, providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second. So why don't we have a presentation from the manager?
So just a few things that I wanted to reflect on. We gave a presentation at the workshop earlier in the summer, as well as on first reading. So I wanted to reiterate some of the spirit of what we're doing. So first of all, I would like to thank the council members who I've been working with over the summer to be able to reflect some of the priorities, including those that were established at the retreat that we had, the strategic retreat in May, which I think was a great success, and I look forward to continuing that process. So the fiscal 20 budget invests in safeguarding village residents through public safety, protecting village infrastructure and property by enhancing resilience through a focus on improvements to village systems and enhancing quality of life on the key with built-in efficiencies. We are investing in protecting value and growing value by creating a resilient village through strategic planning and delivering results. Key intended outcomes include shoring up our first line of defense, our beaches, through federal shoreline protection, increasing stormwater mitigation through investment to handle both sunny day flooding and storm flooding, acquisition of land and open space to enhance quality of life while also advancing our flood mitigation strategies. The village is making significant investments towards improving its resilience to threatening events and adopting sustainable practices to keep the village viable while also reducing our impact on the surrounding environment. We're investing in undergrounding utilities and other roadway infrastructure tailored to harden our infrastructure from the devastating effects of storm surge and high wind speed. We are reducing our negative impact on the environment by composting certain waste products, exploring alternative energy sources, and educating the community via partners with MAST as well as other schools and community groups. Village administration, in addition to its focus on prudent financial management, is striving to enhance the village's communication with internal and external stakeholders, especially with respect to capital improvement projects and progress towards accomplishing strategic goals. During all phases of implementation, it is important to keep the community engaged and informed, and we are striving to do better there. The village embraces the premise that all project stakeholders, including our residents, staff, and community partners, will have easy access to information. We are investing in two efforts in tandem to make progress towards this goal in fiscal 20. Digitization of our current records for quick and simple retrieval, and a communication strategy that pushes information out into the community so residents are informed without having to seek out village news. The communication strategy is also designed to increase participation of cultural events and programs, making the island a cultural destination for residents and visitors. The village is firmly committed to continued excellence in public safety. The primary role of our government is to ensure the security and safety of our citizens. The village, police, and fire departments are providing innovative solutions to all the challenges that we may face. We are investing in strategies for crime reduction and risk prevention. We are fortifying our efforts by leveraging intergovernmental partnerships to enhance resources and communications, as well as consistently educate our community for our best practice to mitigate risk and prevent crime. Finally, this budget funds capital investments that will enhance quality of life through space and programming via our Parks, Recreation, and Open Spaces Department. Enhancements for parks further expand space and opportunities for residents to gather, play, connect, and learn. The third expansion of the community center will also provide additional programming opportunities for our youth, senior citizens, and families, as well as the culture and the arts. In our Public Works Department, we are also focusing on improving our level of service with regard to our maintenance standards. At this time, that was my introduction. I think our plan this evening, we have some briefings that we've gone through with all of the council members. At first hearing, we went through capital improvement plan. We can revisit those changes, or we can jump right into the departmental budgets as your pleasure.
I would recommend we go with the departmentals if there's no objection, and then if we need to, we can go back to the CIP and discuss those items.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So if we want to go in order, so we handed out a table of contents. Tabs 1 and 2 were the millage, reso, and the budget ordinance. Tabs 3 and 4 are 2 memorandums. There's a functional organizational chart, tab 5. We go through all the positions by department, and then we go through our revenues. So tab 9 is our first departmental budget, which is the council budget. We did provide a handout that.
Which tab is that again?
Tab 9.
Manager, could we go back to tab 7 first before we jump into the details? I just wanted to make sure the other sources, uses that are below the excess revenue over expenditures, it has 0 from building inspection reserves. It also has 0 for capital improvement fund. Are we not putting any money towards capital improvement? Because it seems like the entire excess revenue over expenditures is going to our Parks and Rec Open Space Land Trust.
So the Parks and Open Space Land Trust is actually an ordinance that is a 1% allocation of your ad valorem revenue. That's where that transfer comes from.
Sorry, what line is this?
This is down in this corner in the, open it up. Yeah, no, you got it. So other sources, down in the bottom 3 lines there. We have 2 zeros.
Parks and Recs.
So historically, when the village has had revenues in excess of expenditures, there had been a transfer to fund the capital improvement program. What is before you today is a budget that essentially balances the operating needs of the organization as well as the capital improvement plan with some assumptions. And so I think part of the discussion needs to be, is the council on the policy side, how do you want to fund some of those programs? So for the sake of discussion and to adhere to the direction we received on first reading, we assumed $2.75 million worth of financing. We assumed a $508,000 allocation from working capital, and we included the debt service, which we basically used 2.35% interest-only payments at 6 months. And all of this is provided in the detailed comments, but just sort of high level to speak to Councilmember Moss's question. So at this time, at the millage as is presented before you, you're at a rate of 31603. So if I understand where you're going, in past years when there was that excess, you would see a transfer to CIP that is available for you. It is not currently in the budget.
Okay, so how much was in the working capital that we're taking from for the capital?
508,000.
Okay, and then this thing that we talked about of making sure that we have the cash there for bond ratings and things like that, if we adjust that and we brought more money into our capital improvement fund, would that be?
You should still be fine with 508,000.
But it would reduce it by that amount. Is that the question?
Reduce it by
It would reduce it by that amount.
So what would the millage rate be if we didn't draw down those funds, the 508?
We have
And
one
we
of
just use millage?
So one of the things that we've prepared is the millage calculator. So as those kinds of questions ask, we can kind of key in. Can we go to the millage calculator? So if we want to, you can kind of see what we're looking at here. So if we want to reduce back out the 508 from working capital.
This is not in the package?
No, it was just a question that Vice Mayor McCormick had.
Okay, can you put it in, please?
Because you understand that we can't see that, right?
Can you increase your size, right?
Tell us.
Yeah,
She'll tell us what it is. It's something that
All right.
gives us basically an additive as we go through.
It's an ongoing, okay.
Yeah.
So the question I asked was if we don't take this 500 plus from working capital, which is essentially that list of reserves that we heard, and instead leave that where it is and use millage, where does that put us?
It's going to be like a 0.06, more or less.
Yeah, but maybe what we could do is.
Well, let's just see what the numbers are before we start speculating.
We could also put it in the full borrowing.
In the what, I'm sorry?
You could also increase the amount that we're borrowing.
Right, so the
$500,000.
three sources that we can look at, so we have some grant revenues in there. The three sources you're looking at is pulling from your reserves, from your working capital, loan proceeds, borrowing, and then any millage increase that would provide for excess revenues over expenditures to transfer. So those are the three policy options before you.
What's the millage with that?
3.23.
3.238.
I knew it.
I'm sorry, 3.
That's over the
That's
trim
over.
notice.
It's over. All right.
Maybe it would help us to know, given all of these assumptions and the trim notice that we sent in, how much extra money is there sitting there so that we could,
That's right.
we could think about that as we go forward.
Okay, so we could
About
do the
300,000.
reverse, take the 3,195. Okay, we'll run the number.
On the, just a little bit on the side, before, on the organizational chart, why is the finance director entitled deputy director?
So the plan, when we brought on the interim CFO, was to transition the CFO out and onboard the finance director. So while we have both on board, we went with deputy until Chris is.
All right,
has
and
been
that,
phased
when
out.
that the budgeted numbers for the finance director as to his compensation will be the same as reflected in the budget.
Correct.
He's not going from a deputy position to a higher
No,
position.
the salary is what it is.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Andrea, I thought there was a step up, but you've accommodated for that.
It's prorated
Okay.
in the amount. So the number
So-
you see is the amount that
Which
it
number
is.
are we talking about?
The salary for
Well, yeah, I
the,
don't want to jump. We're here on this one. We'll go through
Okay.
each group. I don't want to be
Okay.
jumping all over the budget. There's enough confusion with this budget without doing that.
okay.
All right.
Any other questions
No,
on
I'm
that?
done
page?
with the summary.
So what is, at 3195, what's the number that we need to pull from working capital to make it all work out?
No, leaving the assumptions the same.
Right. Oh,
Let's just figure out how much extra money there is, assuming that we're doing everything you put in this.
right.
Because we're at 3.16 something, and the trim is 3.195?
Right.
So the excess revenue that you would have would be about 270,000.
Okay.
Right, so you could reduce the amount of working capital you're pulling out
By that much.
by 270. So
But
you-
we're not done yet. You
No,
can-
I understand, but I'm just saying
But we
that's
know
the
the
number. So
number.
we know that at that number, we'd reduce the reduction in working capital till
270K
310.
over 3.1603. All right.
All right.
Okay, does that work?
Tab 9, is that what you said?
So moving forward to, so the council, some of the direction that we received on first reading was to place everybody back in their original home. So you'll notice that a lot of the community groups were brought back to where they were. Toward the bottom of the line items, we break out the net impact for the council separate from the boards and separate from the community groups. So the council total budget decreased by 23% from 155,000 to 120,000, primarily due to certain decisions that were made to eliminate $4,500 for the youth engagement that was not happening, as well as we reallocated the some of the prorated costs for liability insurance and space where the council didn't have space, and so we reallocated those costs proportionately across the other departments. And there was also a reduction, very intentionally, in the memberships, dues, and subscriptions, as well as some equipment that was in operating supplies that was more appropriately in the clerk's budget, so we can speak to that when we get there.
Sorry, which memberships do we drop?
So if you turn the page to
Where are you? Yes.
the backup pages.
You're on 7?
24?
You're on tab
Page
7?
24, yes.
For
24.
the subscriptions and memberships that are included in fiscal '20 are the National League of Cities, the Florida League of Mayors, and the Miami-Dade County League of Cities.
Right, but what ones were dropped? That's not here.
None were dropped.
Oh, none were dropped? We just reduced our,
I apologize.
because it's
Give me one second.
12,900 was adopted and now it's 3484.
There was an expense throughout the year
Okay.
that had nothing to do with
was it?
subscriptions and memberships. It had to do, if I'm not mistaken, with something IT related, and I don't know.
It was ours, though? It was council?
I think it had to do with Channel 77.
Oh, okay, all right.
Something in regards to the video streaming, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, okay. So that was about $9,000?
It was rather high.
Not an ongoing expense.
Yeah, right, that's fine. I just needed to.
It wasn't budgeted for appropriately. Maybe I'm speaking, but I don't think it was budgeted for appropriately. And then
I was just curious. I wanted to. I wasn't aware that we had reduced any memberships, and that's
No,
why I was curious which ones.
none
Because
were
I remember
reduced.
last meeting we had a conversation about Miami-Dade League of Cities and the important things like that. So that's.
Is the state lobbyists and local lobbyists under our budget?
Yes.
They are presently both there, yes, sir.
And why is that?
Because they report to us.
Because we hired them.
Okay.
Can we talk about that? That local, well, first, we have been, just as an aside, waiting. The previous council had decided they wanted to do an RFP to throw it out there again and get offers. So as an after action, if I think that's ready, if we could maybe see that in October. But also, there have been talk over the years about the local lobbyist line item, that we really do a lot of that ourselves.
Yes.
And, or we use community members and different relationships we have. I just wanted to highlight it and throw it out if anyone else had any thoughts or comments.
I agree. I think
we should eliminate.
One of the weaknesses we've had in prior councils, frankly, and having been on a few of them, is we haven't made the outreach across the bridge to other communities. And I think that's one of our jobs, is to get out there and meet with those folks. So I agree with you. I think we should be our local lobbyists.
And if we go through our crisis that we go through, I didn't find any help, to be honest with you. I would eliminate that item, I think.
You going to speak against that, Ed?
No, I was going to say, basically, the lobbyist we have is also the person or firm, primary person, who is involved with the Public Service Commission in regards to FP&L and undergrounding. So I think we really should look at the whole thing together, since he is the lobbyist, the state,
Local and the state?
But more importantly than anything else he can do for us is put us
Okay.
is on the upper list to get the projects done for FP&L for undergrounding. So I think that, yes, we should be looking at other people, but at the same token, unless we get somebody who is better well connected at the FP&L Public Service Commission level, we should think twice about it, because it's an insignificant amount of money.
Right.
Don't get me
For the
wrong, I
potential
hate to spend money on this stuff, but what we can save, what we can get done undergrounding is so great that we have to keep that in mind.
Is that local or state?
That's, well, it's FP&L.
Because we have a line
As Public Service
for
Commission.
state and local.
Well,
Do you think we need both of those lines? or-
It's really a combination.
Well, if we're going to, let me say this, if we're going to put this out to RFP, right? Do we want to include
I think we should,
all
I
that
think the
together?
manager should discuss it with them first, say, what are you going to do for us at the state level, at the public service level, everything else as a whole package deal, and see if we can work something out, and then come back to council, and then we can talk about it.
That's fair.
I have
That's
been,
accept- that's
I have
acceptable.
no objection to that, but that to me is a state lobbyist issue.
I understand, but he's also the local lobbyist, and we also want to make sure, more importantly, that with the FP&L Public Service Commission lobby.
Do you think that 50?
let me just,
Go ahead.
Public Service Commission cannot be lobbied.
Okay.
Okay? It's an ex parte
Oh, you understand.
position. It's a judicial position.
We understand.
Luck would have it, in first week in November, I'm going to try to go, they're going to have alumni, all the former commissioners, et cetera, in Tallahassee with the current commissioners. So I don't know much about the other stuff, but I know that you cannot be lobbied.
I understand.
And we do have a state lobbyist, and so, it's 18,000 here, we keep going, we can actually save money. And
Well, I would ask,
I don't know
do you
which
think
one.
we can cover both of those with the line item of the 56,000?
I don't know.
And
So there is currently a contractual obligation that supports those numbers, so we have
I
to
think
look
it's
at
a
back.
1 month.
There are termination
Yeah.
provisions, so you could terminate the service, but to condense them within that budget allocation, those are
Cannot.
Those are contracted
All I'm
amounts.
saying is-
But if you go to the RFP, per the Vice Mayor's suggestion.
Oh, it was Councilmember Gross, but he recently asked me, did anything ever happen? So.
And you know, when we get eventually our communications person, that person would be someone who the full-time job is networking on our behalf, but we have to do the closing. We need to make the visits. People who are in positions of power like to see principals, not lobbyists. So, you know.
So it sounds like we can't touch these line items based on our contracts right now?
You can, there are termination
Yes.
provisions.
You can't say, do both
For the same
jobs for one
allocation.
price.
Well, you
Right.
can leave it in the budget and not spend it if you have something better.
Okay.
That's all.
No, but for them, you have to pay them.
No.
They're on a retainer.
No, she said we can terminate them, and if we can terminate them, you have it in the contract, you have it in the budget, and then you terminate them, put out an RFP, you can spend that amount or less with no problem.
Let's do this. I don't want to spend 3/4 of the night on $18,000. Frankly, we've got a $35 million budget we got to get through. So why don't we do this? Why don't we, I mean, to Ed's point, and if Ed is arguing that we should leave it in the budget, I say we leave it, but let's get that RFP out there so that we can figure out what we're going to do as far as our lobbyist position. Understanding,
For state and local?
yeah, for state and local. Well, I mean,
FP&L.
the fact is, it's one lobbyist, right?
FP&L
We have
also.
one lobbyist.
Currently, there is one provider.
But FP&L is the key, too.
I don't disagree with you, but my point is it's one lobbyist.
No, I'm not arguing.
So let's, maybe we just put it as one lobbyist. I think that the point is that person is doing $74,000 here. So let's just move it up into one line and let's move on that. But then certainly let's go to Councilmember Gross's point. Let's get out there, get an RFP and move it forward.
We can also take 10,000 off of, due to Pat Weinman's efforts of private funding. We
I'm
go
sorry,
from,
Brett, just
So we're going to go on this page?
it's on this page.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Page, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she reduced her ask.
Yeah, but
I would like to, I
22.
didn't have much time. It's a significant, and again, the spirit of openness and the great things. Through my visit in September 5th to the Education Committee, a courtesy visit, I learned, they introduced me to these people, these wonderful women who are doing this kindness in schools program. I met with two of them, also put them together with the Community Foundation, and the other two spoke before us the last time. Bottom line is, they are moving from school to village-wide. It fits into our Key Biscayne Nice thing, and I would like to fund them for their request of $4,750.
Where is that? It's an
It's-
addition?
Yeah, it's an addition. It came, I wasn't going to bring it up. I was actually going to try to find monies through either art and public places, but when Pat withdrew, I immediately called the manager. I have the paper, and you remember the meeting. They are really outstanding women. They've been doing it on their own, and they don't want to, and they want to be nurtured. The Education Committee is going to, help them, and obviously they don't want to be impacted in their budget, which I support entirely, $65,000. So this is a very good group of people with a great idea. They've been doing this a lot, and they have a very
How
specific
much are they asking
request.
for? I'm sorry.
$4,750.
so-
Village of Kindness.
Can I make a recommendation? Can we bring back the youth engagement and make that the youth engagement line of $4,700? We had $4,500 there previously. We can make that there, so it's not this. For me, it's youth engagement type thing. So I support that. I think that the youth leadership. The idea here was to take the word outward bound off of that. There was a $27,000 ask. The problem is that we were going to use, I believe, the $4,500 was going to go towards the youth council. But previous youth councils, when we used to have a youth council, they used to have I believe they used to have a $15,000 line item for the youth council. A long time ago, and that was a long time ago. So one of the ideas was that when she called me, she said she was going to remove the $10,000 from the outward bound. We would use that towards the youth council. So what I would ask is that we take out the word outward bound. We call it youth leadership, is where the youth council is going to be inside there.
That would be her program, youth leadership?
Youth leadership would be part her program, but it would also be part the youth council.
And leave it at 27?
What youth
And
council?
leave it at the
Why don't
27.
you just put it separate?
I would be more comfortable with these things being separate. I think
Yeah.
each person needs to submit a budget. In fact,
And she did a
She-
wonderful thing. I don't want it to get lost. She did a wonderful thing saying, I raised 10,000. It should stand out as a message.
Problem is, we have no money here for youth council in this budget, and we used to.
But what youth council?
The youth council that we're supporting.
But we didn't vote it for it. I wanted to have youth council. I think it's the greatest thing, but
No, but it's going to be it's going to be administered by the foundation with our support. And the only reason why we do that is for two
our
reasons.
financial support?
Financial support. Because we would have to financial support it if it was underneath us. And the reason why we did it is because I don't want to subject children to sunshine law. That was one of the biggest reasons. The second is I believe the foundation can administer it much better than we can. So I think we need to put some money towards that amount. And I was hoping that the $10,000 reduction, we can turn that towards the youth council, because I'm kind of surprised that I don't see the youth council here anymore. Is it inside?
There was direction to remove it at the budget workshop.
I don't remember that at all. To remove the youth council?
Yeah.
The words are still there, just no money.
We voted on it, didn't we?
Right.
Yeah.
also, do you have an idea of what the $10,000 would be spent on?
It would be completely reimbursable on only things that we do spend on. If we don't spend it, we would leave it in the village. But we have to know first, the foundation did not want to move forward on it unless they know they have the support on it, and they would put together what they're going to need, and it would be reimbursable only. So we will not use the money if we don't need the money.
All right, let me go back to my request, if I can get your, the 47 or 5,000 to round it off for the Village of Kindness. Is that something we can put as a line item?
Fine with me.
I mean, as a.
Can I ask?
Yes, ma'am.
The one thing I had thought about because I've talked to those women a lot, and I agree, I think we should support anyone who's trying to find ways to make it us a kinder place. I had thought, and I don't know where I saw it, but in the money that we have for things that the foundation runs for us, there was somewhere I saw a breakdown, and one of them was like anti-bullying and things like that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Probably the exhibit from the budget workshop that kind of had all of the
And
groups
is that
together.
Oh, can you read those for us?
Yeah, and I
So
had
my-
a meet
my-
with the foundation that they would manage their.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think
Yes.
that's really important.
But it's important to send them
And
a
I just want to make
message of
sure
it.
that we're not sending money twice.
Right. No, this will be separate, and like I said, I consulted and met with them, with the foundation, and also spoke to the chairperson of the Education Committee to make sure she was okay and supportive. And I think it's a perfect, everybody's in line. We just need to approve it, send the message, and you can figure out. It should stand out as an item.
Do you guys know what this program is and who they are, since they hadn't really come to us like this? They had gone to the EAB and asked for money and gave their presentation. It's
Laudia Ibarra
and Yvette and oh God, now I can't believe that.
It's Kim Vincent.
Kim Vincent. Thank you.
Susanna Gagla.
And Susanna.
Laudia Ibarra and Yvette Fernandez Schuster.
So the original idea was to start just in school and as a PTA sort of subcommittee. And I think they're still working with the PTA and hope to get some funding also from the PTA. But they would like to take what they do, and please correct me if I'm not getting this right, council member, but they wanted to take the ideas that they had to start in school, but do it village-wide. And basically, the money would be to support speakers and things to engage the community more. And they have ideas and they have plans. And again, this is the same thing, that unless they actually brought a speaker here that would be paid, the money wouldn't be spent, right? It's just reimbursement. But I think the idea of putting them with the foundation is really a great place, because they do a lot of this work anyway. And this just gives more avenues to engage the community.
So in the foundation's budget, it's $10,000 for anti-bullying initiatives.
And I think that they have some of that already accounted for. I had asked Melissa if she thought that there was any that they hadn't already planned on. And her answer was, yeah, I think I can make it work, but I think Melissa manages to make a lot of things work, so I don't know really where the money was going to come from.
They need the 4750. They have a specific budget. They also, you won't recall because it was a long meeting, but they spoke before.
I do remember that.
Yes, they came.
Yeah.
No,
And I
agree with
think
them.
it's a very good thing. They have money for speakers and promotional material. They do seminars for parents.
No, I think it's an inexpensive investment in
Yes.
anti-bullying. I think that
Well, and
one of our
Anti-bullying
goals as a
and Village
community.
of, they're evolving into Village of Kindness that fits with our
This aligns
K9.
very naturally with Pat Woodson's.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and
Piece first.
they've met together and they want to work together too. But they do, to Councilmember Laredo's point, they have their own ideas and their own plans, and they would like this money. I think the way to do it, I think this is what you just said. I would agree that the way to do it is to have them be sponsored sort of through the foundation like we do with other groups and
Yeah, but
work
I am
with
very
them.
confused, Vice Mayor.
I'm sorry.
I just have a very simple request, which is to fund them at 4,750. All the mechanics. One of the great things in meeting with them was that I saw no ego, which is very refreshing in Key Biscayne. They have a track record. They want to work with the foundation. They want to work with the education committee. They admit that they are, new and volunteers. So they don't want to create an organization. They want to be able to do things that they've been doing better. And it fits very nicely with our efforts to get this Key Biscayne ambiance of being nice and kind. This is a very low investment. I was willing to sacrifice my committee's money to do it, but now with this $10,000, I think it'll be, and it sends a very message, particularly relevant to you guys not wanting to do the resolution or the motion. It's that they came late. Yes, I understand and all of that, but you have to understand also that people really don't know guidelines, which is, I think, the word you use. Thank you for about guidelines, so that we will not have this problem last minute next year after Segurola does his work. People would know the deadlines and that kind of thing. But this, we also have to be able to react, and this is great. These people are wonderful, and everybody meeting on the front end. I think it would be a very strong message. Just put it as a line item, and we can administer it. They do not want to administer, but you work out the details with the foundation.
They go by kits, which they got off of, we have WITS, Wellness in the School, which is Nancy Easton's initiative in schools for healthy eating. So it kind of went hand in hand. I apologize if I didn't come across as supportive of your idea.
No, I didn't mean. I mean, it's when you start pushing it in the. I think we need to get credit for. I know the mayor is anxious because this is small money, but it's so important for our citizens.
I get what you guys are doing.
Every time you see somebody good, I want to spend. I spend a lot of time on it because they're just great, and this is not peanuts, but this is it makes it or breaks it for them, and I would like to see it as a line item that we approve it.
I'm fine with that. The 4,700?
4750.
750, I apologize.
If we make a copy, I'll give you the.
You bring in the 50.
We make sure the budget gets circulated to everybody, so we.
Yeah, it's a little, trying to make copies, but.
Just to
have
clarify, to be categorized as under.
Village of Kindness.
The youth engagement line item where there was the 4,500, we can reintroduce the 4,750 increase for KISS, Kindness in Schools, for anti-bullying.
But that was a separate thing, was it? I mean, you're going to put it at youth engagement?
And then, so if I may take a moment, so
Yes.
moving forward, when we implement the new financial system, there is a chart of accounts that is highly governed and regulated by the state and by other requirements for us for reporting purposes. So the idea of line items being so variable year over year, what you'll find moving forward is that the detail will roll up into a more standardized categorization. So you'll have community groups, and then so moving forward, you won't see all the GLs fluctuating, so there'll be a more standardized GL. And then over on the comment side, we can break out and call it whatever we want without, because right now, youth engagement, Village of Kindness, these are not statutory or, these aren't GASB accepted sort of chart of account terms. But for this year, whatever feedback we get, we'll incorporate that when we migrate to the new chart of accounts and make sure that we accommodate that.
So maybe we move the whole 10 over, use 4750 for this initiative, and then the rest of the money sits in the budget. Is that enough, Brett, for the youth council?
It's enough to start. The reason I like to see the reflection of the drop with Pat's group is because it speaks to her initiative.
Yeah, but I talked to Pat about it, and she wants that to go towards the youth council. We spoke about it on the phone many times.
Sure, I don't, that's right, but.
So you just want to see the line item to go down on her item?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But we have to talk about the youth council and what is going to go there because it's not in here.
That's what I was asking, is if we could split the 10 for this initiative.
5 and 5.
I mean, she wants it to go down. I don't think she makes that decision. She's got 27, she only needed 17. I think council makes the decision.
Of course. What I'm worried about is I don't know how much we're going to need. I've been told that previous years have been $15,000. I don't want to spend it all. I just want to make sure we will have enough. The budget there. I think 10,000 would be.
I mean, looking at what we're looking at this massive budget, is it that much to take the 10 and put it there and just give an additional 47?
That would be.
And this is a major cultural issue that we're talking about in our community.
I thought that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Perfect. Okay.
So youth engagement in Village of Kindness, 14,750, and.
Why do you call it youth engagement instead of youth council?
Youth council and.
Doesn't matter, you can.
Yeah, but there's two items, youth engagement and youth.
Okay, so just to be clear, youth council, $10,000, Village of Kindness, $4,750.
Or correct. Yeah.
Is that right?
And then.
We were rounding off to 5,000, but.
$5,000.
15,000.
I just need.
5,000.
See, this is where it starts creeping up.
That's true, you're right, you caught me.
If I may then, one more time, $5,000 consensus of council for Village of Kindness and $10,000 for Youth Council. Is that correct?
Yes.
Separately,
Yes,
two separate items.
yeah, and I don't know what youth engagement is, but it's youth council.
Well, there's youth engagement and there's, okay.
Okay. The only problem, the only thing that I don't recall, and it was in the minutes and I couldn't correct it, again, we have late night hurry-up things, is the car week. The request was for 20,000. I remember moving for 5,000, not 20,000. And particularly after your request, because of as an initial, going from 0 to 1, and it's also as you recall, I also made it a condition that it be rebranded, even at 5,000, Key Biscayne, because it's got another name. It's got a name of an individual. Famous race car driver, and, it sort of got lost in the end, but I certainly think 20,000 for a car week is.
To the point of branding, I think that's a negotiation in order, we're budgeting money here. We're not giving them, understand, I'm explaining for the public, you understand that we're budgeting money for this. Obviously, we want it to be branded with Key Biscayne. That's the whole point of doing these things, is for the betterment of the businesses and the community.
Right.
I don't recall, to be frank. I don't
She sent
recall.
a follow-up email.
I don't recall it.
Triggering my memory.
I even tried calling her. She never returned my call.
Being brain dead, I still remember the discussion was, well, before it was nothing. They were doing this now, it just, we didn't need anything, just support, et cetera, et cetera. And now it was $20,000. And we said, oh my God, what are we going to get for that, et cetera? And to the best of my knowledge, yes, you said it was too much money.
5,000.
Yeah, but I think you're the only one that said that. And I don't think we ever said $5,000.
Right.
And then we had the whole list of things, and we went through them, boom, 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 boom. And I think that was still, even though you mentioned
It's flipped.
5, I think it went.
Well, but we can change it now.
We can give them 200 if you want to.
No, I think I would propose that it be changed to 5,000.
And you said you want it under the condition that it says Key Biscayne car.
Well,
Yeah, I think the mayor says right to let them, it's because
That's a
At least the
negotiation.
manager knows that that's a condition for the money.
I
I'd
would
like
move
know
to
what
change
it
that to
was they were-
5,000.
Hold on.
Before we
guys.
do, I'd like to know what it was they were going to do with the 20. I just want to refresh my memory by looking
know.
at, Katie has the budget workshop. Is there ask in there?
Yes,
I'm
it
looking, it
was.
should be.
And I think they were trying
You
to,
can keep talking amongst yourselves.
well, but I think that's.
We're stuck here.
Yeah,
Well, I
that's
have,
kind of a
two
point
other
of-
small
Okay,
things
bring it.
I can bring
Let's
up
go.
before you do, but I still don't believe that the 2040 Vision Board and the Parks and Open Space Board is we're putting 100,000 and 14,000 to. We're putting those to professional services. That's our initiatives that support those plans. But the 2040 Board is not receiving $100,000,
That's right.
and neither is the Parks and Open Space. They're not receiving it and deciding what they're going to do. We're only doing that. So I think it's a little bit misleading that the boards are receiving this amount of money. It's really going to professional services, and the boards really are not asking for anything. They're not. They're all volunteers, and they're not asking any money for what they're doing.
I agree.
So I think it's just misplaced. I think we should put it under professional service.
But
Well,
isn't that everything though?
No, because the
account for is to have it, obviously, we don't get any money either.
Exactly.
Exactly. And so every time people come up and say doing volunteer work, we're doing volunteer work. So that doesn't sell with me. I very strongly support the educational board's request of 65,000. I'd like to move it if it's possible. It's in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's under the manager's budget,
It's
right?
under
It
the
went back
managers.
to where it was.
Manager, I'm all confused with, to be honest with
So
you.
the
Your
directive we
presentation.
got at the last meeting was to put
Right, but
everything back.
today you have it, it says it's just council, comma, boards and community groups. That's it, that's the title on page 24.
I think once we standardize the chart of accounts and we move away from sort of a description as an account, it'll be much more clear.
But if you'd like to move that one right now, we could do
Yes,
it, even though it's on the
yeah,
manager's
whatever they
budget.
do, I want to make sure that they're doing great work and we need to
I'll
support them.
second that motion.
The Education Committee,
Oh, to move it over to ours?
No, just to move it
To
to
fund
approve
it.
it.
Oh, yeah.
65, Education Board.
Second, no, you seconded it?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And just to be clear, that is in the manager's budget under
Additional initiatives.
educational initiatives in the amount of
65,000.
65,
65,000.
yes.
Thank you.
Just so I have clarification, because two of these initiatives that we're funding independently are school-related. The Peace First is happening at Mast Academy, and
Peace First is really village-wide, is my understanding. It is happening at Mast. It's also happening at the K-8.
Right.
And the St. Agnes eighth graders have been invited to go to the K-8 for that assembly.
Right.
And then additionally, there is just village-wide offering on the weekend, and an evening too.
so if you could just tell me the distinction between something that would go before the EAB and be funded through that avenue versus coming directly here, so that
There-
people know also, because I don't.
Pat did go there, and then she also came here, and she got her money here. I think that the piece of it that is in the public schools could have been out of that budget.
Okay. And then the one that would, the 40,
Also,
70,
they've
50?
tried to, it sounds to
5,000.
me,
5,000, sorry.
it sounds like from what Councilmember Laredo said, is their focus now has really shifted to be more of a village initiative. Is
Okay,
that right?
yes.
Okay. That's Car
As it relates so that we can get the, not controversials, but the ones that we may have some,
Car Week.
I know it's a little bit out of order because this is misnamed, but the 2040 Vision Board is under this council, not the manager's office. And I know how strongly Councilman Moss feels about it, but I feel just as strongly against it. $100,000 is a lot of money for a study for the year 2040, 21 years from now. We have a 2020 plan that we paid a lot of money for, and we still have not fully implemented. I haven't seen a breakdown of what that 100,000 is. In fact, when former Commissioner De La Cruz spoke, he actually said that it may be more than 100,000 because, so I'm all confused, but to me, 100,000 for consultants is not something that having said that, Having said that, in spirit of working together, if moving this or a smaller amount to the budget for us to subsequently discuss exactly what they're going to do, I would be willing to do that.
Yeah, and we have to do that process
Yeah, we
anyways,
have to
because
do
it
that
has to
Right,
come
but I
back
want
as
to
an
make sure,
RFP.
because a lot of people are, people are tired of consultants, and, we don't need to go over that again. And I know the spirit and everything else, but 100,000 is a lot of money.
I mean, let's have a discussion, and this is actually an item, but I just want to bring up a point. I think anything that we want to be left on, if you want something to be taken off, let's make a motion, but otherwise, let's leave it alone, because otherwise, I think we're going to be here. We're already, I mean.
No, I understand, but I wanted to, because I want to
Understood.
be consistent in my philosophy. I'm against it, but we're 7 together, and so it hasn't worked a lot in other things, but I concede to move it forward, subject to it coming back up and the finish.
Well, no monies would go out without our approval. Again, everything on here is about our approval, and I'm going to be making some comments about that a little later on.
Burrito or London?
Are we going to move that to a professional service?
See the car?
Right, so we can create a professional services line in the council budget, and then we could
Yeah, I
allocate
just-
the 100
I know
and
I
the
see, but-
14, and in the comment will reflect professional urban planning services for vision plan and open space board.
Throughout this whole budget, we have a lot of different line items for planning, and I think that we should have a discussion of how to synthesize some of this, because there might be some efficiencies here that aren't represented here. And just to remind you guys, the change that we made in the emergency fund does mean that $131,250 is taken up by that change.
Right.
So we do need to think about not just adding, but
Well, I think we have to talk
Replacing
about a
two?
lot of things. I think the problem here is, here we are at 8:45 on the second budget hearing, and we've got to get this thing done tonight.
Yeah.
So
We're doing
this
the council
exceedingly-
But I think you'll find us
Second
move faster on the big items.
Right, well-
Ironically enough.
Yeah.
So let's.
It's in reverse
It's the nickels
logic.
and dimes.
Again, I just want to go, if
Okay.
there's anything that people want to move off these budgets, let's talk about that. Let's not talk about the things we're willing to include as budgeted items. That doesn't necessarily mean they are approved by us.
Okay, how
So-
about the mask? When does the mask come up, the request?
The
Capital
83,000 for
That's
masks is
capital
in
improvement.
CIP.
That's in CIP. That's a ways down the line.
And the green bike lane, when does that come up?
That's
That's also in
CIP.
CIP.
Okay, so I'll hold my
And
comments.
to the mayor's point, that what this is providing is budget authority, not contract authority. So you're allocating for a purpose, not necessarily to a
Yeah, but
specific
I
contract.
understand that, but I'm speaking to the public who doesn't understand the intricacies of budget. So I do it so them to know that we're not spending 100,000, we're authorized of that.
Unfortunately, yeah, I agree
You know
with
what
you.
I mean?
And that's
People-
why we need to be, next year, our budget workshop's got to be like this.
Exactly.
This is where this is what should have been happening in our budget workshop, and we didn't do that. So next year, I want to make sure that we are talking about each line item and really getting into the nitty gritty, because at this point, we got to get going. Okay, next, anything else that people want removed from council boards and community groups? Okay. Moving on to the next tab.
Just so we're clear, so the
Where?
the revised bottom line is,
Which tab do you want? 7?
We'll be moving, I'm sorry, we are
it
going,
added 5,000.
it's $379 and $71.
We added 5,000.
What are we up to now?
we should be on tab 10, but I don't see a tab 10 in mine.
Okay.
I got tab
Okay.
11.
Page 25.
Page 25 is tab 11, tab 10?
Quick question about video streaming, which is, I know, a shift over.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
But it looks like we're going to do an improved service for the community. Is that accurate? Jenny, this is your budget?
I apologize.
That's okay.
I was just
Oh, no,
catching
that's
up on my
fine.
notes. May you repeat the question, please?
I was asking about the video streaming. Are we spending more money, or did we just move it over so that we can get a clearer picture or a better service to the residents during meetings and things?
This is an increase from the prior year, and the reason why is because it includes $15,000 for the closed captioning encoder that's necessary on Channel 77. So it's definitely an increase.
Is that going to be an annual, though, or is that just a one-time purchase? That was the question.
Not a one-time purchase,
It's annual.
annual.
Annual, perfect, okay.
My question is social media. What are we doing with social media for 30,000?
30,000, that amount of money is just put aside in case of an emergency for communication purposes, above and beyond the communication tools that we have within the village.
What do we do now,
Above and
social
beyond.
media-wise?
Right now, we have a Facebook account, we have a Twitter account, we have the website, Channel 77.
My question is, what would we do more with the 30,000? Was it hire people, or what are we talking about?
It's for an additional assistance that would be needed in case
Like a
there's
PR
a
firm.
hurricane or this past year, Ultra.
That's what you did in Ultra, right? We hire.
Yes.
That's what we use.
Would this line item still be necessary if we are going to
That's
fund a
communications
communications director and a communications program?
I would defer that to the manager because
Somewhere along the line, you're going to give us a deadline on when you're going to do a communications director.
If approved this evening, we're ready to move.
Mayor, I think I'll move a lot faster than you're frustrated.
I'm not
Once
frustrated, I'm just-
because I think there are two things that we need to remind ourselves. One is, I correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not going to micromanage, but I know what I ran for, and I want to give you the big picture at the end. And you did ask for a consultant, Mercier, I think it's called,
For the class and competency?
which is to study salaries and everything else.
Correct.
So with the caveat that what I'm approving today is always subject to, A, not being spent or reviewed, it would take us 10 hours to go item by item.
That's right.
There's a point where I have to trust, and we need to send her, as I will later, a clear message where at least one person wants to go in terms of, and how far we come, but how far we have to go.
Is there any?
So
okay.
I would move,
What did you just say?
that I trust her for the time being.
Thank you.
So
I wasn't sure.
I'll move, but there will be, this is our first budget. We inherited a budget. She inherited a budget. I was not as stringent as I am fiscally because I think the measurements from now until next year about where we want to go fiscally. But I'll talk about that later. I just want to move the clerk's budget as is, if that's.
We don't even have to move with it because it's remaining the same
with the
essentially.
clerk's
If you're
budget
not
now.
moving anything out of it,
Well,
does
okay.
anybody want to take anything out of the clerk's budget?
We were just wondering about the 30,000, but we can keep it in there if you want. I
That was
mean,
all. I wondered about the social media.
Okay, I think that's a fair.
She won't spend it, it's there. If she needs
Look,
it, it's there.
exactly, and I think when we get to the communications, when we make that determination as how we're going to proceed on communications, and I do want to speak to that now that are we now at the manager's budget? I think that will be something we will determine how we want to proceed with the communications prior to prior to moving forward with the communications. I want us to have a conversation. I'm fine with budgeting money. I want to be clear about tonight. I'm fine with us budgeting money, but I don't want to create this just direction to manager. I'm not approving a communications position. I'm not approving a communications department because I'm setting aside money for a budget in 2019. Now, I don't know how that works. If I'm putting money into the budget, does the manager automatically get to run with that?
She's already in
Chad?
it.
Well, that's fine, but I see $170,000 here for communications, I believe, and I see a few things that I want to know.
Yes, that's a good question.
You know, it's about,
So once you fund that position in this budget,
right,
the manager,
can do whatever she wants with it.
She
Okay.
can hire somebody.
So I want to be clear that any
But not
money.
for 175 is
Well,
what you're saying.
and that's my concern, and I want to be clear.
And it is mine too.
I'm willing to earmark, although that's not a term we can use in Washington anymore. We can earmark that money for communications here. But Chad, what's the mechanism by which I can say, we'll put that money aside, but I want us to be approving and understanding what's going on before we go forward
Sure.
with it?
So this has happened before, and I think that you can give the manager direction that money is budgeted, but it's not to be spent at a not to exceed. I believe, what was the item in last year's? I
saying don't
remember
hire
something
anybody,
came up.
What's that?
You're saying that she just shouldn't even hire anybody today.
But yes, you
Not
can
today.
place a
Yeah.
restriction on
That
that, but you have
question
to
should be
be
asked.
affirmative, so she knows.
Okay, has anybody been hired for the communications
No,
position?
no.
Okay.
You haven't talked about this salary, right?
I
So
want to
it's not,
restrict.
it's not a
We give
salary.
direction to look for that, though?
To look for, but what do we, but we're also talking, now we're saying that potentially we may not need a chief resiliency person if we need a communications. I want that all vetted.
No, I think that's
Well,
a different conversation.
Well, to my mind, that's an entirely, it's all one conversation until we break it out and make specific direction. If
So
we're going to
I
have that
can-
No, here's
conversation.
the thing, as
to
I
where-
understand the mayor, because I'm with you.
I can
We
speak to-
approved the hiring of communications director. We've had crisis after
we do
crisis. I don't know, we can
I
look
must
it
have
up.
been sleeping.
Okay, well, you can vote against it if you like. But I have a lot of problems. I counted, and I don't want to get in the way, I counted about 30 positions. Actually, I counted 34, but I could be off because on division, over 100,000 on a $35 million organization. I have comparable companies, including some that I'm on, $100 million in revenue. So, and when I saw 175, I had the same reaction that you did. I mean, if you're going in even that general direction, you better stop it now because.
I'd like to explain, if I may.
Okay.
So the communications program at the retreat that we had in May, if you recall, we had a whiteboarding exercise where we went through all of the elements of what the communications program was. I took that exact material, laid it out line for line, that included expanding reach, monitor, and response to social media platforms, posting of routine operations, developing stewardship content, including the Did You Know campaigns, public service announcements, and your tax dollars at work. We included the website, which the clerk and I have been working on hand in hand, including website content management, develop and implement and maintain a communications strategy, call reporting software, newspaper ads, town hall meetings, participating in HOA meetings, community engagement, open space namings, design of flyers, postings, et cetera. Develop, implement, and maintain customer-centric organization, including particular accessibility issues that we need to deal with on our website and our social media platforms, and customer service training. So the sum of those are the objectives that were outlined on the whiteboard, and we went through one by one and identified which items were the responsibility of the manager, which items were the responsibility of the clerk. And I took that exact material. That was how the program was established. We then priced out the different elements. The line items you see before you includes this entire program, as well as the salary for an individual, as well as in each department previously, there was a line item called communications and communications website, where there was a part-time consultant. We pulled all those funds into the program. So our objective was to holistically portray this is the cost of the entire program that includes the staff person plus all of these elements plus the website.
Andrea, why is you said that you're going to hire somebody full-time, correct, with a salary?
That is the recommendation.
So why is in the budget we don't have the salary under the salaries and wages and it's under strategic priorities?
So again, trying to deal with the chart of accounts that we have and the financial system that we have in order to capture all of the direction received at the retreat in May, we put everything in one section in the budget.
But it's not clearly telling us the real picture that's going to happen here, because right now you have a 15% increase in salary and wages, which is actually going to be a lot larger when you put the communications person in there.
And I would also add that includes the 170, last year included 170,000 for an assistant manager. Did you guys improve an assistant manager last year?
That was
carryover from before.
Right, we just tried to, so again, we don't really have the greatest systems in place, and so we're trying to work with what we have.
But we need to get the greatest system in place
we now
because
do
we
have
have to articulate to people that you're not hiring a $175,000 assistant billing manager. And if they come and look at this, that's what they see. This is what's on the record.
So
I want to be clear, and I'm going to restate, and I will vote to include that amount only if nothing goes forward without approval of council at a subsequent meeting.
Yeah, and I want to make two other comments, if I may, because we got to get this right eventually. The retreat that we had, which I still haven't gotten the actual report on what our priorities are, and it was several months ago, did not imply, as we talked in generalities in the retreat about certain things we wanted to do, that was something that you have to quantify or monetize. That would have been a description of what that person that you were hiring would do within their salary, because we keep, mixing apples and oranges. So you went to 175 on the assumption that all those items we discussed about as priorities were going to cost money. Then what value added does the person that you're bringing in? What is he or her value added? I think you need to refine that, because it's very difficult to. Madam Manager, obviously for me and a lot of people, and today we had another gentleman, communication is a problem, and I'll take the risk of saying something that I shouldn't say.
Can I just move this thing forward? Why don't we approve this subject to and with the manager's consent and agreement? She'll come back to us in future with a detailed breakdown of how much is the salary, all these various items she's talking about. And then at that point, we discuss with her and say, that's not what we really had in mind, or that's fine. Is that acceptable to you, Andrea?
Well, Ed, I mean.
To move it along?
I have a problem just because, look, I mean, if I go down these proposals, the goal, resilience, objective, resiliency master plan, ILA with CMB, I think that's county, is that City of Miami Beach or MD, and a professional development for resiliency coordinator, $50,000. I'm not sure, does that play into our chief resiliency officer at all?
Yes, so that's a great point, and I think some of your colleagues were bringing that up before. If perhaps to close out the communications item, on page 7 of 114 in the package, which is within tab 4, the communications program element is outlined. Many of the line items call out, these are the responsibilities of staff. There's a hard cost associated with the website at $50,000. Perhaps what we can do, based on the council's direction, let us know what salary range we feel is appropriate, and what we can do is move the salary range into the salary.
With all due respect, this is coming back as a separate item. I want to go through this.
The budget, though, needs.
I understand. I have no. Yeah, we'll do it, but we're going to have to do a budget amendment.
You're going to have to move it from there to salary, right?
So you don't need a budget amendment to move from within. If you're not changing the bottom line, the transaction has happened by resolution.
I think this has to be something. Yeah, if you want to take it out, fine. My thinking is leave it in for communication plan, because that's where it is. It's not in salaries right now. It's simply in communications program.
Because it's more than salaries.
Well, that's my point, but that's all it is. It's not, but there's no salary listed in the salaries.
Right.
So that's not a problem right now. We can create a salary subsequently. We can amend our budget to include a salary subsequently.
So we can put together a manager's report where we come back to the council outlining all of the functions of the duty with the salary range.
That's great, and I think, again.
With approval by us in order we want to move forward on that or not.
Of course, with the whole thing approved by us. We need to start taking control. I think we've got to be clear. We're going to have disagreements up here, and that's absolutely fine as to what we want to do, but it has to be us who are doing this. And I feel like we're sort of pushing it off on the manager, and we need to be clear about what we want.
I think there's a combination here. We are a strong manager form of government. We are setting policies.
We're a council form of government. Respectfully, we're a council. We direct the manager. We are the ones who direct the manager.
Okay, but then she administers that.
Absolutely, 100%.
Out to the village.
100%.
So I think.
Yeah, but I agree with you. But for example, it went unheard because she asked us to give her what we think that salary is. That's not my job.
So
that's not my job.
The time sensitivity is that the consultant that we currently have working with us has not renewed her contract. So she's terminating her employment with us. September 30th is her last day. So we posted the ad. The salary range, I think, was 60 to 110, I believe. And so we haven't hired anyone. That's the range based on the due diligence and the market analysis that we did for the level of competence that we're looking for. So perhaps you can.
The size of the community.
Right.
I don't know what your comparables are, but we're literally a very small community.
Yes.
So,
I mean,
again, that's what I'd be willing to move forward on with this. Yes, sir.
I'd like to remove solar benches.
Okay.
Well, if we're going to speak about this, the solar benches, I would like to make a plug for us to be putting a push to get a chief resiliency officer that's going to pull all of these things together. But if we're going to do it, we need to do it with, I guess, parameters and direction. And some of the stuff that's in here that are solar initiatives that I'm not against, I just think they should wait until we have somebody and we have a plan that coordinates priorities, instead of putting the solar benches,
100%,
the charging stations, and even the educational lectures, because I know the Key Biscayne Community Foundation does quite a few lectures in that area. So this, I'm jumping ahead here, but
Are you looking at are you talking about all these resiliency, these objectives?
page 40, they're small numbers,
Yeah.
but I do think.
No, I'm right there with you. I agree 100%.
I think that that's important, and I even think the master plan, I don't know if we need to, it's not a bad thing to budget $50,000, but again, like the vision and the resilience to me are almost one and
I
the
agree.
same.
They should be
And
absolutely
so,
the same.
so I don't know if we need
I
a.
don't think they're the same.
I don't know how our vision can't have resilience threaded all the way through it.
I mean, vision is a very high level, ambitious type ideas that are out there and setting that character of what we want. And it's also looking at our threats or strength, weaknesses,
Resiliency and sustainability.
opportunities and threats. It's looking at all of that. But then when you go to a resiliency plan, it's a much more detailed level, going more into engineering systems. You're actually looking at real systems and putting together those
Stormwater,
master plans, like your
underground,
infrastructure,
beaches.
all that kind of stuff. That's not what the vision plan is supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be setting out just a direction, but not actually the strategic part
But I think
where you're setting out these things.
I think the resiliency person has to be involved in all of that.
It would be great if they're involved.
Well, not only that, go ahead.
No, I completely agree in terms of we may be putting the cart before the horse and spending money before we're prepared to. I think we need a chief resiliency officer or somebody of the sort to get involved in the village, learn what's going on, and then next year's budget, we might be in a position to fund this. But between the solar benches, the education, the charging stations, and that resiliency master plan, I think we could slash it from this year's budget, save a little bit of money, and not.
Put that towards this contract resiliency position that's at 125.
Right.
And I would either, I guess we could determine whether we want to do a contract position. We could ask the manager to come back to us and tell us what she thinks would get us,
sorry, you
get
said
all this
125?
synthesized together faster.
I had 170 here.
No, it's 125, right, Andrea, for the resiliency?
Resilience officer?
170.
No, 125?
Contract.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I misread it. So
That's not what's proposed. What's proposed is to use the money that we're not going to pay, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrea, that we're not going to pay the beach consultants starting, I think, in April
That
or
was my
something.
initial recommendation on first reading, and based on the feedback we received, this is now in addition to that.
So it's in addition to that?
Yes, sir.
So we're going to have the beach consultants plus the 170 for the sustainability, the
repeat.
resilience contractor, whatever, consultant,
So,
director, excuse me.
okay, let me see if I understand this correctly. We have in our budget 125, because it also says for just 20 hours a week.
Right.
So that wouldn't necessarily be a full-time position.
At $125,000.
That's $125 an hour. That's a reasonable or low price for somebody who's qualified.
How much did you
As
say?
a consultant or a
It's
salary?
$125 an hour. There's 20 hours in a week, 50 in a year is 1,000, 125.
1,040 hours in a
Well, they
year.
take 2 weeks off. 125.
Sorry,
125
2,080
an
hours.
hour.
40 at a 40-hour week.
That's reasonable to low range.
So, but that we're talking.
Excuse me, no. Is this an employee of the
No, she's
village?
talking about hiring a consultant, 20 hours a week at $125 an hour.
Look at
That's
you're
a
going to kill that
reasonable
man.
number.
That man's going
Don't
to
worry.
fucking stroke out over there.
Not all of us agree with the consultant.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Reasonable part-time
All right, so
employee.
we haven't got
No,
there yet.
I actually believe we need a person, we need a chief resiliency officer.
I do believe
We
that
need
too.
somebody who's going to come in here and be our technical, we've spoken about this as, this person should be involved in our stormwater, in if we need to do work on sewer, on our beaches, in our undergrounding, whatever we need to do to make this island more resilient and more sustainable, this is the person who's going to help drive the bus, and also is going to be weighing in on issues of, when we're paving, what are the right materials to pave to allow for better draining? When the community center is doing projects, what is the community center doing? How can they be making things more sustainable and more resilient? That's what this officer should be focused on. That's what, if you've read the comments and people in our community are truly engaged in this and they've been doing the research. That's what communities have. That's what we should be looking at. Again, I want to state, I'm willing to put money toward these things, but we have to We have 7 people up here. We have 7 different opinions. We're going to have to determine what we want. I'm happy to put the money aside, but I don't want to say, yes, we're going to give $125,000 for a contract position that's part-time. I'm not in agreement with that. I think 125 plus other things would cover a full-time employee, frankly.
Oh, I mean, 2 for me. I mean.
Well, chief resiliency
yeah.
officers tend to
Okay,
tend
well,
to have
I've
a
been
little bit
trying
higher,
to
but-
call my contacts
So-
and at many meetings, and I still have not seen a job description or what a resiliency is the latest vogue word. Okay, it's just come in, it's becoming popular now, but I haven't been able to get somebody tell me what they really do. And I would hope that somebody can give me that. I reached out to some areas and I haven't gotten anywhere. And I'm against having a consultant, either
Yeah.
no resiliency officer.
And we can have that discussion. I agree with
Okay,
you.
but here's the thing I do know from the little time I spend in government. You budget something, you get an office and a chair, and pretty soon you have a person sitting there, a secretary, a driver,
And that's my point. I want us to
Okay,
budget, but
and-
we have to approve before anything gets done.
We get busy,
If we
and
can,
the room gets full, and all of a sudden, he or she needs an assistant, and then they need a.
I understand. Your point is well taken.
But this,
if I could make
an
a
assistant to the
suggestion,
assistant.
if instead of us getting sort of bogged down in the weeds of what these positions are and what we want, what we don't want, if we could make a decision that these positions are priority to us, we approve the funds with the stipulations as Chad laid them out, and I would say that we need to come back and define these things for the manager and what we want, how the money would be spent once we allow it at a later date. But we need to do it quickly because these are positions that we've, to some degree, each said are a priority. Clearly, we're hearing it from our residents that these are priority positions, but tonight is not the night for us to be deciding what the job is, whether or not we like the communications plan as it's been presented. If you want to really dig into it, we should do it, but at a later date. My suggestion would be that we approve the funding that has been suggested as necessary, and then we come back at maybe our very next meeting and really dig into it and decide what we would and would not allow or like.
And she should take our comments.
I feel confident she will.
I have an idea.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Segarola, then Councilmember Petros.
I agree about the philosophy with the 125,000 and having it subject to our approval or discussion in the future. However, I'm proposing we eliminate these 4 items and save $78,500.
I second it.
Well, I have one thought, which was, before we vote on that.
Councilmember Petros can make her comment.
Can you tell me
I don't need to look.
I'll let her
Page
shoot.
40.
Okay, we're discussing page 40,
Page 40, yeah.
and we're discussing the line items of the Resilience Master Plan, the charging stations, the education, and the solar benches.
Right here,
Or
50.
keep the resiliency map.
Similar to what the
about
manager
$80,000.
did with communication, where she gave a lump sum to address the communication program.
Here.
We could give a lump sum that includes that 125
Page
plus
40.
some of these other things
I got it.
towards a resiliency.
That's exactly what I would suggest.
Idea.
I'm right there. That would be, you guys have already made the motion to remove those monies. A friendly amendment would be to put those toward a resiliency plan or a resiliency officer, whatever we want to call it.
A resiliency program.
A resiliency program, perfect.
To be more clearly defined.
And that we would then go forward and we will make the determinations on what that is.
I agree with that in spirit, but my goal would be to cut something from this budget, just to feel better, I guess. And number
I love
two,
the $1,000 for education. that
and number
foundation
two,
already does.
I think there's already enough resiliency things here and there all over the budget that if and when we actually hire someone or contract someone or whatever it ends up being sometime in the next 6 months, they're going to have their hands full for this fiscal year where we can budget more money next year. So, I mean.
I agree 100%. I second the motion.
So we've had friendly amendments all over the place on this thing.
How about we just put the master plan money into?
Master
what?
plan, the master plan money, is that all right? The master plan money?
Into
With the
the
125.
to make it 175.
Make it
Right.
175 for the program, for the resiliency program.
Without calling it a master plan study. Or,
To be
Yes.
determined later.
I'm with the original.
I'm fine.
I like to cut.
I'd like to cut something.
Well, we are. We're cutting three things.
But that's the wrong place to be cutting.
Moving it out.
If I may make a suggestion.
Cutting $33,500 right out of that, right there.
Yeah,
That's versus 80,000.
You can put a trophy up there. We cut.
Well, I'm not trying to do that, but they want to cut something. I mean, my
wrong-
feeling is-
it's the wrong
we don't
place to
wanna
be
be
One thing I
cutting.
would say
agree.
is that electric
This is
vehicle
very
charging
much the wrong place to be
stations
cut.
is something that we definitely hear people in the community asking for.
Yeah,
true.
but
And
the
it's-
cost versus the impact, it's
It's
like
$2,500.
But 2,500 here, 2,500 there, it adds up.
Okay,
And like,
I'm telling you that I think that there's a lot of people with their golf carts that
Well, their
would.
cars.
Or their
Their
cars.
cars. People talk, I mean, I will tell you, we have them in our building at 240. They get used all the time. People are using them. And they're helpful. I mean, people have talked
If we
about it.
do plan and we have 175, I'm
Okay.
sure that 2,500
Could be brought out
Could
of
be.
that plan potentially.
instead of
Especially
spending
'cause it's-
2,500
it's-
now, I'd like to come up with a plan and then fund something that will actually have a greater, more realistic impact down the road. Because this for me is it's a token expense. We're saying, we're doing it just to say that we did. That's just how it feels to me. Same thing with the benches. I mean.
But we all agreed to cut those.
Right.
Yeah, I don't see, I know what you're saying. I don't see it with the charging stations, just because we've heard up here for a while that that's something that people are asking for, but it's $2,500. To your point, we can bring it later.
I just want to say something, and I know some people may not agree, but resiliency, however you want to make these buzzwords, I mean, they're very serious things. We are extremely vulnerable, and we know we are. We're on an island, sitting out in the ocean, and anything can happen. You don't need to call it resilient. You can call it asset protection, risk management. We have $8 billion in assets here, and we're talking about 50,000, 100,000 for people to look over our projects when it comes to sewer, stormwater, underground utilities, beaches, dunes, water quality, parks. We're also looking at somebody who can look at new technologies that we're not thinking about, that can connect to the other agencies, because there are agencies and conferences that are happening, and we are not there. We're not there. We need to know what the other municipalities, the other governments are doing, and could those negatively affect us? And we need to be at those tables. We need to be looking for grants. We just heard about the $11 million grant that just came in from FEMA. They could be doing this type of stuff, and that would pay for them tripled. Working through threatening scenarios, what if scenarios, we get hit with a Hurricane 5. How would we mitigate this? How would we keep our protected and get people back up on and not wanting to leave Key Biscayne for good? Training our staff, working with different representatives from different departments. I think these are types of things that are extremely important, and we're looking at protecting $8 billion of assets, and we're talking about 33,000, 50,000, whether we're going to have a person working 20 hours a week. Forget it. This is the most important thing that I think we have here, and we need to get serious about this. I mean, we need to put something there.
So, Mr. Moss, I agree with you 100%. We already approved that.
Have we
We
approved
approved the resiliency and offer. What he's suggesting, I think very intelligently, is to eliminate this thing, not because we're just looking for something to cut, because this is putting the horse before whatever. You know, that person is supposed to come back and tell us this thing. And I'm going to tell you, sharing experiences, I almost laugh at the 2,500. I ran 500 gas stations in 3 countries in Latin America. There's no way you can put recharge. I know what it costs to put recharge electric things. $2,500 would not buy you even one. Yeah. So this stuff is all, those 4 items need to be eliminated and used. And with, I think the caveat is once we cross that bridge, next year when this guy will give us a plan for real, and it may be a lot more money. I can tell you on recharge is going to be a lot more money.
What we should do is eliminate all of that you guys were asking, and we should change the resiliency up to $200,000 or $250,000 for that line item. Because we don't know how much the person's going to cost, and if he comes or her comes, they may say we need to start on the plan right away, and we have the funds there to do it. So maybe we should just put it there.
What plan?
A resiliency plan.
He needs to come and go to work and get things done.
Exactly.
And go get grants.
I would like to also make note that one of the things this person can do is highlight all the things that our village is already doing with resiliency, because each one of these departments, as you look through this budget, is attacking resiliency in one place or another. Now, we need to do more. We need to be able to make sure that we are in front of things and there are plenty of other things to do. But another part of this is highlighting what is being done and what people are working hard at, because it's embedded throughout here, and pulling those together, and whether or not ultimately it's a department that has pieces from all these other departments, because that's the point.
Well, that's right. That's what
we
this-
have to be resilient
this department
throughout.
will touch all other departments in my
Yes.
mind.
To move things forward, I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah.
We need something.
Right.
Called full-time, part-time, half-time, consult. We need resiliency. We're going to have it done one way or the other. Let's budget the amount and let's go forward. Tonight, we're not going to hire anybody.
we're not.
gonna do anything
We're just
else.
budgeting the
So let's
money.
approve the money and just
How
move
much-
on.
already crossed that bridge.
Fine, then let's
If
move
I
on to the
may-
next item.
There was a motion duly seconded to eliminate those items.
It's only fair to allow me to speak on what we have done, because there has been some information that hasn't quite been reflective of the energy that we've put in. So, a few things. So the conferences we have been actively attending and participating in. We secured an $882,000 grant for beach renourishment. We are very close to securing between $2 and $2.5 million within the next few months for a FEMA grant for beach nourishment. We are also developing a resilience plan that we are doing in-house in coordination with agencies across the state and leaders, including the City of Miami Beach and Miami-Dade County. Miami-Dade County has agreed to support us at no charge. City of Miami Beach has agreed to train our staff, each department by department, to make sure that we are, based on our own practices and the services that we provide, that we know and we can integrate into our day-to-day operations sustainable practices and hardening of our infrastructure. The EV car charging station cost assumes only the hard wiring, because it assumes a branded solution where some folks like Tesla would actually install the infrastructure, and all that we would need to pay for is the actual electrical components. We are also partnering with private sector and community groups, including the composting group, City of Miami and University of Miami, to obtain grants to pursue new technologies. We are engaging with our own residents in the village of Key Biscayne to pursue pilot programs on new technologies and get them permitted through the Department of Environmental Protection. The initial plan that we have drafted with in-house resources exclusively includes identifying the major threats, like the Rickenbacker Causeway, like the elevation certificates that we have failed to be properly maintaining, raising the BFE, looking at complete streets. In fact, we have very well done renderings that look at elements of our village where there are direct rainfalls, where porous pavement would be appropriate, where you should have aggregate retention beds, where you should have vegetative swales, including berms and dunes. We've looked at the elevation of roadways and how the current swales that...
Who's doing this for us?
We're doing this in-house.
Yeah, but who?
Me,
Who?
Jake,
I love it.
Tad.
No.
I love that he made, forgive me for interrupting you, because I was going to discuss this at the next meeting. You have made an extraordinary case.
I'm not done.
Even up to now, you have made an extraordinary case why we do not need a resiliency officer. I think we have on house a lot of expertise that we need to train and perhaps compensate, and people who are, because one subject that concerns me, Ed, if you let me, is we're making so much progress, and there are a lot of new people in management here in the country. But I hope that we don't have a high learning curve from people who, this is a very unique community, and we need more people coming, either people who are already on staff that knows the interests of this community. And that applies for everybody else that you're going to manage or hire. So that we don't have an investment of 6 months for the person to figure out Key Biscayne. We are definitely different, both good and bad. We're an island, and I'm not into quotas or hiring local, but I hope you look that people don't come here and spend the first 6 months basically learning. And I always thought, and I was going to ask, what resources do we have that we can enhance? And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm against an officer that could coordinate it, but you just answer my question. We've done a lot of stuff.
Let her finish.
Councilmember
So
Petrus.
I don't know then why you put in all that other money, up to 175, plus the 80,000 that he moved to move out. That's, if you say 80, 70 for the salary, which is about the range, 70 to 80, and you had 175, that's $100,000 plus 80,000 of his, that's $200,000 that are in the budget that doesn't seem to me that are justified, as per your presentation now.
Well, it's a,
Hold on, I think that's overstating it a little bit, but Councilmember Petrus, do you
well,
have
I
something
was
to
just
say?
going to say, again, obviously you're working very hard on this issue, but I think that you could also benefit from somebody coming in and sort of taking the pressure off of the individual departments so that they can go do and then somebody can coordinate, which is why you put this in the budget. And I know we have spoken to you about how important this issue is. I think each of us probably individually. So given what you know, is what you've put in here the solution that you think can get us the most throughout the next year?
Yes.
And what would you do with these individual line items of charging, education, solar benches, and the master plan? In your budget, who was going to put that master plan together? That's what you're,
Us.
so
But
then
at the
why
end
was
of
it going to be
so
50,000?
At the end of the day, I wasn't expecting Miami Beach to charge us 5,000, and I wasn't expecting Miami-Dade County to charge us nothing. So I think they've been so impressed with our energy and what we've been doing. They are excited to onboard us with their teams and leveraging their resources. I think we do need to keep some funding allocated because at the end of the day, there are graphical depictions of things. There's going to be some cost associated to make this consumable. And although we've taken it quite a long way, I do think there is going to be some additional cost to be able to finalize what we're doing. I would also say that perhaps from what I'm hearing, it seems like there is a will to move on a communications program. There is a will to move on the resilience program. My recommendation would be pick your number, and I will work within it, and we'll come back with the positions, with their obligations, with what they're going to do, with the key performance indicators, as we have for each department director. When we get to those performance measures, you'll see what we've laid out, the same as you have set for me, my objectives and my performance indicators and my performance evaluation. I'm applying the same process across the departments. So perhaps we approve the budgets as they're presented. I come back with a report identifying what the program would be. You agree on the outcomes and the performance measures, and then we rock and roll.
I will agree to put the money in the budget. I will not agree to the program until we define the budget, until the program. We can have that discussion among ourselves, but what's the amount we want? We have 179, I think we said, toward the communications. What are we saying for resiliency?
She had 175, right? For
So
resilience.
across
175 plus 80.
No,
So
it was
175
125
Plus 50.
plus the 80, and if we did the 50 of the plan with the 125, we could put as a line item for resilience program 175.
Right. I think that's, that,
Are we hiring people or are we contracting?
we'll make that determination.
Well, no, we need to tell her,
Oh, yes, we decide, we can decide. I feel like you, I don't need a consultant. We need a full-time person.
Yeah.
I have a problem with the salary. I think if you want, we put her in a motion so that's clear and people
Which
understand.
position are you talking about?
I think the
The
manager has
resiliency?
demonstrated that
Resiliency.
basically she has done so much without anybody. She's taken the initiative. She's done all this. Why don't we let her
Well, I'm
budget
going to
the
be honest
money?
there because
She'll go ahead and
my
decide what she
concern
needs.
arises because of, frankly, what you put in the narrative, where you said, in the event the village determines we in fact have a communications issue and not a resiliency competency issue, we may not need a chief resiliency officer. And I want to be
I've
clear
learned
on
that one sentence will never leave
No.
me. It wasn't well. Bear with me. It wasn't well written. I think
But
the
that-
point
I
is
want clarity
that
on
we
that.
need both. We need
I agree
communications
with you
and
100%. I've
resilience.
communicated that to you 1,000
And
times.
my objective in presenting what we've presented is I believe that we are meeting both.
Well, but no,
And if
because
you don't like the
you're
sentence, we can
budgeting,
reword the
respectfully, you're budgeting
sentence.
125 for a part-time person. And that, to me, doesn't strike me as.
The will of, sir, the will of the council. I have put forth what I,
And
based on our
that's why,
discussions.
no, I'm answering Ed. I'm not answering you. Ed is saying, well, why don't we let, and I disagree
Well,
on
no,
that
because
point.
basically, I think somebody came back before who was studying this thing and said, listen, one of the major things a resiliency officer time is spent is communications, communicating resiliency to various excuse me, interest groups, stakeholders, what have you. That it's not an all scientific thing who's just reviewing, okay, should I have permanent payment here or do that?
have an idea.
So before we need two people, is it possible we have one person who is a resiliency officer who's also doing communications? I think that's how we started, and if it doesn't work out, then we can have the second person.
Yeah, no, I disagree with that.
Okay, fine.
Well, I
Councilmember Moss.
just want to say that resilient officers in Miami-Dade County, Miami Beach, they have a department underneath them. We're going to hire one person. Typically, those officers are the communicators, and they have all the expertise underneath them. I think we need, if we're going to hire one person, we need to get somebody who also has the expertise that can do it all
And I
as
think-
one.
And to your point about the person being in communications, Councilmember Laredo has been harping on this for now 10 months, that communications is critical in this community, and we're not doing a good enough job about it. So that's why the manager's been looking for a communications person. I don't think the two roles are mutually exclusive. I don't think it can be combined, frankly. I think resiliency will have to work with communications, but resiliency has other parts of their job. So that's where I am on that. So I would want us to do 175 toward the resiliency person, and we'll leave 179 for communication.
not person.
I'm sorry, program. Thank you for the correction. Program, then it will come back to us, and we'll make a determination as to what we want to do.
Just for clarification, if you add the 125 plus these four line items, you have 203,500.
There's 5 line items. Oh, you're leaving the strategic planning
But we have
workshop.
to vote on your motion.
Right. So that's what you're proposing. My motion is to leave the 125 and to cut these 4 line items.
So you want to cut out the 50,000, the 225?
Yes. My personal opinion is, if
He
you were
can
to
wait.
hire somebody next month, they would have their hands more than full for the next fiscal year with what we already have, that they will not need
I guess
these funds.
Except that she was saying this money was being used to coordinate with these
Now-
other
now,
municipalities.
okay,
So
that-
maybe it doesn't need to be 50, but something needs to
Now,
be there to give you
what
that
I was going to
flexibility.
propose 150 total, 125 plus another 25, to cover whatever expenses come up working with the Miami Beach and whoever else. And then you'd go
On
from,
resiliency.
on resiliency.
That's an amendment to your motion?
Yes, so
I
you go
second
down
it.
from 203,500 to 150
I second your motion.
For the resiliency program.
to be allocated by the manager with council involvement and approval per what you said before.
Right. Okay, fine. For 150,000 toward the resiliency program, earmarked for that program, subject to, I know, 150.
To be more clearly defined later.
To be more clearly defined by council.
To be.
I think it needs to be
For
one.
contractor, employee, and program.
Or however it works out.
Right.
If I could make a suggestion on that, and then hopefully we can move on to the rest of the budget. If it seems everyone has really, really strong opinions, of course, completely different from each other, but if you could try to share them with the manager before she brings everything back to us, so that perhaps it will facilitate a more fruitful conversation, and we can put this all to bed at our next time that we talk about it.
Okay, Jennifer, take
May I ask the
control.
question? So a motion to amend the resiliency, or I guess to add, I'm
Here we go.
sorry.
To combine.
We're going to remove professional services sustainability from the manager's line items, 125,000.
And recategorize it into the resiliency program
Program.
for a total of $150,000 and remove the resiliency master plan, EV charging stations, education, and the solar benches from the
Yes.
whichever line item this is.
Correct.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm sorry.
Motion-
One thing that dawned on me that that kind of rounds this all out. And I think, thank you. I think that was a helpful discussion, and I think we're going in the right direction. One thing that is most mission critical to me, and we've spoken about all of the projects, the big capital projects that we have coming online. And our staff is excellent, and we are technically competent, and we are well-trained. And in order to deliver on some of these capital improvements, like the beach nourishment project, that we are starting a brand-new beach nourishment, the federal shore protection modeling program that we're going to be doing, the undergrounding, these projects require project management above and beyond what we have available to us on a day-to-day basis. The way that I had structured the CIP and my vision for this moving forward is that projects come and go. So I don't recommend typically saying, let's hire somebody that would be here just to manage a project. The projects are done, and operationally, we don't need those folks. So so I think from the operating budget, why don't we leave it at the 150? I think that makes a lot of sense. And then I have two things that I would encourage us to add. Allow me to include some oversight, owner's rep work on the specific CIP projects that we have funded, including the dune restoration, the beach nourishment, the undergrounding, the shoreline protection, in the CIP line items that are already budgeted for those, for an individual. Perhaps this chief resilience officer would also serve as boots on the ground to help us implement, including even safe routes to school, which
I'm fine with that. If you want to, if we can talk, but again, I want that all to come back to us.
It'll all come back. And the last thing I would add, performance-based, do it as a performance-based program.
Well, we'll talk about that going forward, but I think I don't know about that.
Budget?
I didn't quite follow. You took us from resiliency to capital investment, so maybe it's late in the evening, but.
I have this.
So what we
page
need
12
more,
of
what I
114.
feel we need at this point, and thank you for recognizing the work that the team has done. We've put a lot into this. As the plan gets cooked, we need to act on it. And
What plan?
The action plan. Right, so some of the projects that come to mind are, for the first one is the federal shore right. We need somebody to day-to-day oversight to deliver those projects.
On capital improvement.
Capital improvement.
Where did you leave resiliency? When did you put a period, new paragraph?
That
What is the connection?
individual should have the capabilities to manage complex projects, including undergrounding.
When and if we do undergrounding, when and if we do. Okay.
Correct, and I would say focus on
Wouldn't
just
be a consultant.
Thank you.
Right,
That's
efficient.
how you sell
It's
it.
in
I
the-
will say this because when you last spoke, and thank you for bringing up all this stuff that, I don't know how long you're going to wait to talk about the good job that the staff is doing. It helped that you spoke at the end of the discussion. And you said that you got the sense of this council about resiliency. You got this. I want to tell you at least mine, and I think it's been the behavior of this council. We also have a mandate to reduce cost and bring efficiency, and if possible, reduce, which means reduce the budget.
Right.
This budget grew in spite of, I was going to talk about it at the end, but I'm looking at the big picture, and we're still in a growth area, and so, if you spoke about two things you got clear from us, I hope you get the third one, which we're looking to reduce things that, from which we can save money. That's all.
There's still
Manager's budget?
wait, there's still a
Manager's
motion
budget still?
that a vote hasn't finished.
Yeah, it was voted.
Okay, for the record, I vote no because I think it's too low.
Thank you.
And it was cut off before we
I apologize.
finished the no vote. Yeah, it was yes, but there was no
Redo the
all
vote very
again,
quickly.
so.
You want to call the roll?
No, don't call it.
She did already?
No,
Okay.
I just want to make sure
All
you
those
know.
in favor to the amended motion, which includes a resiliency program for $150,000 and the removal of the AV charging stations, the solar benches, the education, and the master plan for resiliency.
And the
Is that correct?
125 is a line
All those in
item.
favor, aye?
And yes, the recategorization of the professional services. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you.
Thank
Next
you.
item on the manager's budget?
Yeah, the next item on the
Yeah, a
manager's.
question on the financial advisor. I see that was 50,000, we spent 93,000. I didn't understand.
Wait,
the-
Ed,
What
what
page?
what page
Slow
you want,
down.
Ed?
Same, page 30,
Okay,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Auditing
are.
financial advisor, and I see 50,000 was budgeted.
Wow.
And year-to-date, we got 97,000. What's the difference?
So I'm not sure where in the line items, but I can speak to it. So
Okay, right here,
basically, we had
no.
salary savings because a finance director position had been budgeted, but we didn't hire somebody until recently. So the interim CFO had been paid out of professional services, which is the proper accounting line item, out of salary savings.
So the 97,000 is basically our contract advisor plus salaries.
The salary is now hitting the salary line item. It's the contract, the
Okay.
interim CFO, plus the current retainer agreement for the financial analyst.
Okay, I'd like to propose remove the 50,000 that we're now paying our financial advisor. I think right now we're going to probably, this coming year, go to market to raise a lot of money for capital, for the various projects we're going to do. I think at that time, we should have an RFP out, or an RFQ or RF something, in order to get who is most qualified to lead us down that same stream. We don't know that our present financial advisor is, they might be, very well might be, but I don't see any kind of services or anything else we're going to get now until that we should pay $50,000 for. So I think that should be removed. I think we should put out an RFP, and more than likely, the people are going to do that, because I think also our present agreement is that we pay $50,000 plus a percentage if they raise money for us, don't they?
If there is a debt issuance, the commission gets paid out of the debt debt
But
issuance.
to the advisor that we have.
To the
correct?
advisor that we have.
Exactly, which, again, we're still paying for it. So my question is, I don't think that's the proper thing for us to do today. I think today is fine, we've had a great job from Lourdes, but she can be one of the people that pitches us, as everybody else does, for our business and what they can bring to the table, and how can they advise us, and how can they get us the best deal, the best relationship at the lowest possible cost.
Wouldn't there be a fee associated with that,
No,
though?
it would be built in because they'd be making all the money on the underwriting.
So we don't need those
Like a
services for
one-off
all the
job?
things we have currently existing?
That's right.
So sorry, and so
That's my opinion.
I think in general, as a general practice, it's always good every once in a while to have RFPs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Aren't
think
we
it's
gonna have
good.
to pay- Yeah, that was my question. So we're not going to have to pay that person?
That's correct. Because what happens now, it's like we raise money, like,
This is
she said.
when because we're definitely going out
Market.
to market
Yeah.
with a bond that's
Exactly.
going to be,
And they're going to get a fee, a fat fee. Now, there's no reason to pay Lourdes and have some other firm that's really doing it, or who we'd rather do with, and we'll pay them and pay her. Makes no sense. Now, if we use them and we decide we're going to use them, then that's fine. But I don't think we should
but
make
it wouldn't hit this line item, is
I
what
would
you're
eliminate
saying.
this line item, that's correct. Save $50,000.
Is Chris, do you have an opinion on this?
Pobre.
Well, it's $50,000. I mean, Lourdes has performed a lot of services for you over the years. And I agree with the Commissioner, Councilmember London. Typically, before large issues, you would probably go out and do an RFP for both a financial advisor and then once they're on board, an underwriter or underwriting team. You know, I think also with the skill set that your new finance director brings, a lot of that idea work can be either brought up or paid separately if need be. So it's really what you want and what you expect and what you're used to. Honestly, for cities of this size, you don't typically see that type of retainer. But over the years, you have issued a lot of small issuer stuff. So, and I don't know it historically, but in the recent past, I don't think you had the capacity in-house to really structure those. So that is something that a finance director ordinarily would be doing, at least initially, in planning long-term finances. But like I said, you do have a long-standing relationship. She is familiar with all your bond deals. Right. So I don't know if that's an opinion. It's just a question of fact.
Thank you for your I think that she could be the person who win the RFP. I think we need to contract
RFP.
or
Well, I guess
whatever.
that's a decision. you don't
Yeah,
have.
and I think it's important to spend our money when we need it and different, so I second your motion. It's nothing against any one firm, it's just that we're moving on to a new stage.
We have to vote on it?
Yeah, I think we, yeah. I mean, I just want to make sure, I mean, look, you know, Lourdes has been here for a long time and done the work. I understand that, you know, we should be going, we should always be looking
Exactly.
to review, so. you know?
Could we hear from Lourdes too and ask, is this
Yeah.
something that's standard or typical? And I know you've done a lot of work for our community. So if we are, is it savvy to, given that we're going to be borrowing a large amount of money, to basically eliminate this line item so that we then put it out to market where you would bid and everybody would bid on this
So in addition,
money issue?
so the role of the financial advisor, what I serve is to manage your current debt portfolio. You have many issues outstanding. And in order now that you're going to enter into a stage where you're going to be issuing bonds, somebody has to set you up for your credit quality. All of that happens prior to starting a bond issue. You have to have the conversations of, setting up the village for appropriate credit standing in order to be able to issue those bonds. So in addition to everything that I do now, I would be doing a lot of pre-work prior to doing work that has to do with the issuance of the bond. I think you would be making a mistake.
I've made a lot of them.
Yeah.
To be getting rid of your financial advisor at a point where you're going to need them the most.
Right.
Does it make sense to potentially, I guess, think of this as like an interim where halfway through you would set us up and that would be like a 6-month thing prior to your firm potentially bidding also on the
We've already started to set up timetables and we're looking at starting to, work towards doing a bond issue in a couple of weeks. So we're looking at starting in October to start moving forward to structure a bond issue that will ultimately close at the end of February.
Which would be eliminating the process. And we need to go out to market for that.
Again.
Yes.
I've had a little experience doing this, major, larger issues, even government, quasi-government things. You call in the various different people, like I say, RFP, RFQ, you listen to their presentations. They give you their pitches, they tell you what they can do for you, they tell you all the things that she's saying to you. They don't charge you anything to do that. Then you make a decision who you're going to go with. The people you're going to go with are going to be the leads in raising the money for you. We don't know that they're going to be the leads or anything else. So why do we want to commit ourselves to them? It makes no sense.
Well,
I mean, the only reason we do it is because we like Lourdes. There's no other reason to use
Well,
it.
and she's been good for us, frankly.
I'm
Yes,
just telling you.
She's very well acquainted with everything that we have
You want to go waste
$50,000.
$50,000? Go waste
You have a lot of
$50,000.
debt outstanding. We're looking at refinancing.
That's the question. We've got a lot of bond issues. We've got rating issues. We've got.
That's right, and that's but you do what I'm telling you to do. And that's when they take care of the whole thing.
Well, I think I want to talk, I'm willing to leave the money in the budget until we have a conversation. Look, I'm willing to talk about this, but I'm not willing to cut somebody on budget night with you just saying, I want to cut this line item without investigating it myself. I respect your opinion immensely, but I'm not going to cut them without looking at this. That would be irresponsible.
It's irresponsible not to check who else is available and what they have to offer.
I'm not saying we won't. Ed, this
Well,
is
we
a
haven't
budget.
in the
But
past.
I
This is a
do
budget
think
item.
maybe what we should be saying to you, Lourdes, is not to continue to get ready to issue that bond.
Make a presentation to us.
Because we will be
And that's fair.
accepting
And better
presentations.
get
as
presentation to
opposed-
everybody else.
But that doesn't mean we cut the budget right now. You want to cut the money out later, I understand, and it's a valid argument. But I want to have the funds budgeted so that if we all disagree with you at a later point, I respect you immensely.
We're going to
Ed,
slow
but
down the
on this-
process, so we need to move on this if we're
You've been
going to take it
involved
out
in
to
this government
bid.
finance.
No, I agree.
Well, speak up. You always talk.
So are
No,
you-
no, that's what I always say to you. You
Should we
speak
just
on-
call this question then?
No.
Because you
If we
approved
all-
at the last budget that you wanted to move forward with the stormwater
Yes.
bond issue
stormwater
because
bond
you need
issue.
to do capital projects.
And you just
Right.
can't.
But that
No,
doesn't.
we haven't, there's one council member who hasn't made any decision on any bond issue. And
Well,
I've
no,
been
we
through a lot of
voted.
bond issues. So the problem with being a councilman in a small community is that you have to make hard decisions with people you respect and like, not just like, but respect, including some community people. I think this is the prudent thing to do. I think we need to do something more generous with her in terms of transition. It is a little bit unbecoming to do it today. If the intent here
Today's
is
the
that it
budget.
goes into the budget and we don't spend it, that we can later on, address it, I would go with you and do it. But I share his view. Professionally, that's what we need to do. We're moving into a new stage. And it may be that she wins anyway.
That's fine.
I also
That's
think
fine. I have no problem with
that
that.
people expect you, like in the private sector too, that you even just periodically, you should have it on your checklist, Madam Manager, to go to RFPs, because people will realize that you're trying to test the market.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
I know what you're saying, and I don't like to disagree with Mr. London, but I share his feelings, but I think the mayor is right in terms of
procedurally.
The procedural way to do it, if you would yield on that.
Yeah, it's got to be called. Let's call that question, please, on the
No,
50,000.
I think.
Well, he made the
But I'm
motion.
sure he can persuade.
I'll be happy to withdraw if you want me to
Let's
withdraw.
persuade, because we don't want to have
wasn't
divisive
seconded.
votes.
Thank you.
I'll withdraw.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Ed.
So at our next meeting, should we be directing to have an RFP? Because it looks like the
Absolutely.
process had already started, and we need to.
Or an
We need
RFQ.
to
Let's have the discussion on whether we should have an RFP or an RFQ. We'll go through that.
That's determined by law.
Okay.
Based on the scope of the work.
Okay, so we don't have to have that
You don't have to
discussion.
have the discussion.
That's good.
You just need to be informed.
So, yeah. Can
Chad, what is the quickest way to do that? I know that we made a vote that put this before us in the community, and we have to get moving on this bond issuance.
Well, I think that you're talking about the stormwater.
Yes.
I think that you can go out to bid, like you're suggesting. You still have someone, a financial advisor who's being paid and will be working up to it. You're not going to be able to select somebody within 3 weeks. So, I mean, this one, I don't know how big the issuance is going to be, but this one may, go forward. I don't know. It's up to you guys, but that's.
Yeah, but no, it's up to us guys to tell you what to do. You guys get paid to do it. In fact, it's in your budget. But I think you get a sense of that we want to move.
Right.
And you have to find a way to do it quicker and cheap as possible.
I know, but if you're going to go out to bid for a financial advisor and you're trying to,
Not to bid.
unless
You
you
don't-
bond,
we're not bidding
unless
them.
you're,
We're not bidding
We're winning
them.
presentation.
We're selecting them. It's like an engineer.
Yes.
Basically,
if you're going for a request for qualifications,
Whatever,
it
yes,
is,
qualification.
RFP.
Okay, whatever.
I mean, that's going to take you. It's going to take you a couple months to do that. I mean,
Why?
Because you're going to have to go out. You're going to say you put it out next week.
Yeah.
You're going to have to give at least
60 days,
3-4 weeks for people to respond. You want to have good people to respond.
And then we'll have them come in, we
And then-
talk to them and select one.
Well, that's a question. Do you want to have the council be the selection committee? Do you want to have the manager recommend someone to you?
That's
I
a
mean,
conversation we have to have at the next meeting.
It's going to take time. At the same time, you're trying to go and, it depends on the urgency of this stormwater. If you're trying to move that on a parallel track, then, you can still have your financial advisor working on that bond deal and be going out for an RFQ for these future larger procurements, or, I'm sorry, bond issuance, like for undergrounding, whatever it may be.
What I think, and I could be wrong, that we're missing about Ed's point, I don't think he has any problem with that, but what he's saying in essence is, in that gap of time in the preparation, why should we spend money?
Oh, okay. That's.
And that's, I think, the essence of what he's saying.
Well, no, that's your decision. I mean.
No, I mean,
clearly.
that's what he said, and it makes sense.
So the
Don't spend
question
money
is-
where you don't even know which highway you're gonna get on.
I get it. So then that's.
But
a
in
separate-
essence, his motion is to freeze it.
Yes, so that's a separate issue because you have a contractual relationship with the retainer, and if that's a separate issue. If
And you
you
have
want to
Chris and Benjamin here also.
We're not, okay, with respect, are you making your motion? You're going to renew the motion? You withdrew your motion. I'm giving him the option if he wants to put it on the table.
No, I think what I wanted to do is convey, sort of off the record, to both of them,
Off the record.
in case they didn't get.
I think they get it.
Okay.
I think we're moving on.
We can
All right.
move on.
So
Yeah,
let's
thank you
go
for
to, so I just have some questions about the manager's budget.
Where is that, on what page?
I'm going back to page 12, which is,
12.
I guess, positions by department. I had a question. The assistant manager position for base pay FY '19, there's $170,000 put toward that position?
So last year, there was a lot of discussion about an assistant manager, deputy manager, finance director, CFO.
Okay.
Where we landed is, you can see in that worksheet for fiscal '20, there's no budget allocation and there's no position. So it's not being proposed, it's not being recommended, there's no funding allocated.
Okay, but there was just, well, but what I want to be clear is that 190, does that come into the 858 For last year?
So it was 170, and the bottom line of the department aggregates all of the budget allocations for those positions presented.
But the 170 is included in the 858?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so really that position was never created. So really it was at 678 was your full-time salaries last year?
So the position.
688, sorry.
So as we discussed earlier, the salary savings for that position funded the contracted interim CFO. So in your actuals, you'll see when we do the year-end budget amendment, you'll see the professional services line item being charged.
Now, where's the professional services line item here?
This is the line item we were just talking about.
Mayor, just
That was the 50,000?
Yes, sir.
So it was 47,000. So 97,000 went to, how much went to Lourdes Abedin last year?
So Abedin, her retainer has been the same for many years. I think it's $2,500 a month.
2,500 a month is what, Ed?
What, 30,000?
Okay, so
25 or
She gets 50,000.
50 a year.
50.
it's 50 a year. So
4,166.
just the interim finance director made 47,000?
No, sir. He's at an annual contract of $8,700 a month. I'm sorry, monthly.
And where's that contract? So 47.
So contracts aren't
ICC.
in the budget. These are just the budget allocations. So out of the 170 salary, we basically had $8,700 a month coming against the salary savings. So
And how much is 8,700 a month for 10 months?
I'm sorry?
How much
About
is
100,
for
about
a year,
100,000.
7,000.
10 months, you said.
For 12 months.
So you said about 100,000.
87 is 87,000. Okay, so that's not reflected anywhere
So
here, you said?
what's shown in the positions by department are the adopted budgets.
No, I understand, but now I'm going back to your line item budget on page 30, and where would that line item be reflected? Where would that?
So the CFO, as we've onboarded the finance director,
No,
we're
ma'am,
eliminating.
the interim.
There will be no more interim.
Where was the interim last year?
It was, so as.
In the professional services, which is the 50 plus the 47.
Well, that doesn't make sense. If she's getting 50, there's 47,000 left over, but if he's
Correct.
getting 8,700
He didn't
a
start in
month.
January.
He started in January, is that what the total was?
And remember, so our rules provide for within a budget, the budget basically balances to the bottom line, is the way that the village has been doing business. So when we do the year-end budget amendment, you'll see a transfer from the salary savings, because the position had only been filled recently. That money will move to professional services, and you'll see the actual expenditure for Mr. Wallace.
Mayor, can I jump in real quick? Just so you know, I believe that last year when we did the assistant manager, the idea was to do assistant manager / finance director,
Right.
is what we were talking about,
Understood.
and doing something like that.
No,
So
I
it should
recall
have
that
gone
once
towards the
she said
finance
that.
director.
Yeah, so that was, I'm a little confused. I'm trying to find, because actually the financial advisor, I was just trying to follow along, and I just don't see it in the line items for expenditures last year, and that's not making sense.
What is additional salary for bibliography for and IT for council, 71,000?
So when we first started, we were looking at some of the contracts and the service providers that we had in place, and I became aware of two excellent employees that had actually been staffing a function for the village via a contract. And pursuant to FLSA, if an employee is working, they are entitled to compensation. So instead of having an employee making a salary and then also being paid as a contractor, and also pursuant to the IRS audit, those individuals are now being paid directly as employees pursuant to the law. And so we wanted to.
I, as usual, don't understand you.
Okay.
So
it was a contract.
We have an IT director that we pay, a T administrator, we pay 97,000.
Correct.
And then there's 71,000, and explain to me literally what videography and IT for council is.
So it's the AV services for the live streaming that you are witnessing now.
So, but these are people,
These are two
salary.
people that are behind that window.
Yeah, I know who they are.
Right.
So who is it up there and the other one?
So
Isn't
that
that
is.
overtime?
I'm sorry?
Isn't that overtime?
It's overtime for those
It's overtime.
individuals. Pursuant to the collective bargaining agreement in FLSA.
It's overtime. Someone works here during the day.
Thank you,
works
Ed,
overtime.
but you answered her question.
Well,
Thank
good.
you.
So now
Thank
ask
you.
the
No,
next
I
one.
agree. I mean, that was the answer. You gave, so this is $71,000 in overtime.
Yes, sir.
It was more like a second job, though, I think, right?
Yes, ma'am.
It wasn't them doing their same.
What are we
Thank you for
doing
speaking
going
English to me.
forward this year?
So I think right now they're doing, a great job. They know the equipment, they know the infrastructure. I think when we implement some of these systems, there might be some opportunities to look at streamlining the video streaming. Some of the service providers who provide the Novus Agenda, our agenda management system do offer the video streaming. So, we can look at alternatives, but right now, this is the solution that we have in place, and
okay,
if it is a priority of the council to revisit how we're delivering this service, we can do so.
No.
Well, again, forgive me, I'm not, but when you add.
Sir, it's not an addition, it was a contracted position before that's not actually.
The people out there don't understand. They understand $71,000 in overtime. They get that.
Okay.
And they get that there's also a person that has a fairly good salary.
It's not that individual, sir. It's
on IT.
It's his assistant.
Okay. You think that's sellable? That it's just we cannot have somebody be here at the times that we're convening here? Or?
So both individuals work their regular day jobs and they have their regular duties. On top of that, they work additional.
Right, unless you redefine the job description.
So I have limitations based on the collective bargaining agreement.
Well, we're going to have a lot of clashes, but it doesn't sell, Madam Manager. It doesn't sell.
Sir, if I may, what doesn't sell was the
sell
prior.
to the people who pay the bills.
So the prior agreement was not appropriate. You cannot have somebody who's entitled to compensation when they're working and then also be receiving compensation under a contract. That employment arrangement is not appropriate. This is the appropriate employment arrangement.
But it doesn't change the numbers.
It didn't change the bottom line.
Yeah, it doesn't change the numbers.
She doesn't have the flexibility, obviously, to determine the work hours. So therefore, she's given the work hours from 8 to 5 or whatever, 7 hours a day. But I guess that's a standard work schedule.
They work a standard work, and then on top of that, they're providing a
because that's what contractually
service.
she's obligated to do. The next contract, now that arises, she can change that. But until that changes, she's obligated to do it under. Is that correct?
No, she has no longer a contract. They're on the payroll.
No. Pete is covered under the collective bargaining agreement.
Yes, sir.
So therefore, he has standard work hours under that agreement. These are not the standard work hours, so he's getting paid time and a half or double time for what he's doing now. I don't know what, time and a half or double, I'm not sure.
Time and a half.
Time and a half. So until, let's say the next agreement comes up, she might have, when you do the bargaining, you then say, fine, I need the ability for flexible hours. And then we do that, then you don't have the overtime. But until she does that, she has no choice if she wants to use him, okay? Does that make sense?
Are you saying the shorter our meetings are, the more money we save on this line item?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It is a
Unless you hire
direct
somebody.
correlation to the number of hours of
He's a
meetings.
nice
I'm sorry?
No, again, it's very difficult to have these discussions when you know the people and how capable they are.
Yeah.
But the question becomes, if you are in the corporate world or anything else, hire somebody else.
If you're in a corporate world and you're bound by a collective bargaining agreement, you'll still be able to.
Hire somebody else. Hire somebody else.
Okay, that's fine.
I think the point being that last year, the way that it was being recorded was not kosher, and this is upfront and shows exactly what's happening, because you wouldn't have seen that line item last year.
Conforms with the agreement.
So can we now move on? Is there anything else that anyone wants to go through on the manager's budget?
Nope.
We might have to start moving quick. I think we only have an hour left.
That was the manager, that was the.
Village
can make
attorney was the
motions
next,
instead.
or
Attorney is next.
To do what? No, I don't want to make motions to stay longer. We still got to vote on the budget.
Where are you?
So next up is the attorney's budget.
I move that we eliminate it.
What tab are we?
That was tab
So
number
it's tab 12 is the attorney's budget.
Farther than I
I
thought.
move it.
Oh, no, you can keep it.
Questions?
Nope.
I guess I would have one question, which I should have asked you before, but we didn't have, did we reduce the labor relations line item? Because it's not a collective bargaining year, and yet we went over. Do you know what that was for?
Generally grievances and things, I would think.
I think that it was probably related to a lot of exactly what you're saying, some EEOC and that type of thing. Also, there was a lot of labor work towards the beginning of last budget year, if you recall. I don't know exactly where all that's coming from, but I do think that coming up, you are going to have a collective bargaining year, so it's probably going to be more into the range of the year before that with the actuals.
The 100.
Yeah.
The important thing to me is that it's continuing a downward trend.
Well, I think
640,000.
I think that I have made a lot of really hard efforts to continue to reduce our time. I've been working with the manager extremely hard to try to create more efficiencies. I think I'll continue to do it. I think that she's putting some good people in place, and we have some good procedures that we're following at this point.
And I commend you for it, and I
Thank you.
move it again.
Is your bond council only going to be $15,000 for us raising money? So if we raise $50 million,
It's 25.
you're only going to charge us $15,000?
Deal.
Documents
I mean, that's what you have there, so I assume that's your cost.
Well, it depends. You know, sometimes the village has paid the bond fees. Sometimes it gets rolled into the bond issuance.
No, my point to you is whether we're still paying it, whether it rolls into the bond.
Correct.
We pay it outright.
So,
how
no.
much are you going to charge us to be our bond counsel?
I guess it depends on the size of the issuance.
Are you going to work harder if it's a bigger size? You have the same boilerplate no matter what you do.
Well, but there's also larger liability when you issue the bond opinion.
Come on.
Yeah, you know, Ed, if you notice some of the other departments, and if this
I
is a
understand.
standing
I'm just
department,
asking how
it'll be
much-
3 times this number.
Ed, based on all of
The
your
legal counsel, I'm saying,
experience,
is
do you
very
think we
low.
should budget
I'm very
more?
happy with that number. I just want to make sure that's your number.
Ed, are you asking us
Ed,
to
do you
budget
feel
more?
based on all of your experience, we should be budgeting more? Because
Oh,
in the spirit of
course.
trying to move forward, what numbers should we put there?
I mean, we're going
Ed,
to
come on,
raise.
we got an hour, so.
What do you want to put there?
You want to leave it there and come back later when he brings it up? That's fine.
Well, we should try to get the
Well,
budget
then
as
you'll pay
close.
for it, like he says, you'll pay for it in the other end, okay? Your cost of issuance.
It was 25,000, but this past year we didn't.
You didn't do anything, did you?
We didn't have any time to it.
There's no bond counsel.
So that's why I cut it. But
What about 17?
in 17, it was 35,000. I think that we were probably doing some refinancings then.
I bet we know someone who could tell
yeah.
us.
If there's one department who's gotten our message of cutting costs, it's this one, for now.
Not a department, it's our employee.
Well, yeah, but if
Chad,
we could have
quick
had a
question.
department.
Should we
would
move a
have-
little bit of general down into labor relations, or do you think we need
You
to
can
keep the?
do that. I mean, underneath, like the manager has said, since it's in our department, we can,
It's
it
all-
can move from
Okay.
line item to line item.
I'm fine with it as
All
it
right,
is.
BZP?
Okay.
There's a motion, if I may have it seconded, and then
Well, we don't have
What's
to
the
make
motion?
motions on the.
To approve it.
he has a
made
motion.
I'm sorry?
Okay,
I'm
second.
sorry, there was
second.
just a motion on the table.
Okay.
Hold on, because we may go back and have to make changes. I would recommend that we
Go through the whole thing.
go through
And
the whole
approve it
thing
all
and
at
then
the
approve
end.
it all at once. Just in case we have to go back, we say, oh, wait a minute, we need this.
Yeah, well, we
Okay.
can change it. I just think
I
we
hear you.
should be eliminating things, so we don't have the.
Well, what are you going to eliminate?
The legal department, we approve.
Eliminating the legal department, no. Let's
No,
move
no,
on.
No,
eliminate
he
it.
means,
I mean,
Oh, eliminated as,
No, eliminate it off the.
And we don't have to go back and
We don't have to go
Usually-
back. I just
That's
trying
your
to.
motion was to eliminate the legal department.
No.
No, look.
we do usually
I'd
go
like to
through it all
eliminate our
and then
debt
just-
service. How's that?
Exactly.
That's a good one. So do you want to keep the motion on the table?
I like to because we have
All
an
right,
hour to
second.
finish.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Debt service. Anybody have problems?
what?
Debt service.
We don't want to pay anymore. That's
I'd
it.
like to make a
What are we
motion
doing
to.
We want to default.
Go. Make the-
Let's
call the
just
vote.
go.
Call the vote.
All those in
There was a
favor?
thing-
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, so.
Bill, they're
BZP,
taking your laugh stuff a little too seriously.
So Building, Planning, Zoning
You
Department.
had to
so
come
we've-
back, huh?
We've broken the department into 2 divisions, planning and zoning and building. So we can start with planning and zoning. So some of the goals across the department, including both divisions, we had mentioned earlier, digitization of records is something that's very important. Not only will it make for easier records management and access to information, but it'll also free up some space within the BZP department. As you know, earlier this year, we did do a restructuring where we are looking at basically, we have one contracted code compliance officer and one in-house code compliance officer. With the restructure, few things have happened. There has been a shift of responsibility onto the building and the building inspectors to enforce the Florida Building Code. So they're processing more of their own cases as opposed to having the code compliance officers processing those cases.
How's that working out?
I think with regard to work without permit, I think we're doing okay. I think where we have room for improvement is on the maintenance issues, and the way we've addressed that is by funding the horticulturist position. What we found was that a lot of our engineering bandwidth had been dedicated to softscape, landscape, more maintenance issues, and perhaps that is not the most useful allocation of those resources. So I think there is still room for improvement. We had one code officer that we tried with one of the firms that we've contracted with. It wasn't a good fit. We moved to another code compliance officer who I think is doing well. I would encourage the council and the community, as you come across things in the field, please do let us know. I think some of the things that we did realize, like for example in Parks and Rec, there was some code enforcement activity going on with coaches and the registration of coaches and things like that. So as we've come across those issues, staff has done a good job coordinating across the different departments where we're more engaged in each other's operations. So if there is a need for a compliance officer within the parks, the parks folks will reach out. So I think we've done a good job with that, but I do think we need to do better. And there are some strategies with including the horticulturist and including some awareness campaigns. One thing that we have come across with regard to code is that we hadn't been particularly consistent with the enforcement of the code, and that has created a very difficult standard for anybody to walk into that role and succeed. And so I think over time you will see a shift towards increased compliance with our code, but we need to do it in a way where residents can be made aware of the code, be given time to comply, and educate folks on what our standards are. I think a couple other highlights in planning and zoning, there was some part-time support to help add on to the services that our current staff is doing. The work volume had decreased, and so there wasn't a need for that additional part-timer, so we eliminated some of the part-time works because the existing zoning reviewer can handle that. On the building side, I think the records digitization is huge. The other key performance indicator established for the department director is to complete the implementation of the building permitting system. And the other performance indicator, we had been monitoring the revenues and expenses in the department monthly. In our briefings, we've all talked about the implementation of the fee schedule, and we have become aware that we had not implemented the fee schedule properly. So we have now trained the staff, and we are, with the permitting system, we'll have the proper controls in place to ensure that the proper fees are being assessed. I have asked that we increase the reporting frequency to weekly now that we have trained folks on the proper fee assessment. If we come to the conclusion that that any element driving the revenue over expenditures, which needs to be pursuant to the Florida Building Code flat, if we find that we're not going to be able to accomplish that, we will bring something back before the council for discussion.
Manager, I'm trying to follow along the 177,500 that you have for the increase to outsourcing code compliance restructure. I'm trying to look at it in the detail, but I'm having trouble. How much is actually for the code enforcement, and how many? You said one code enforcement officer is what we're outsourcing?
Right now, we have one code enforcement officer. I think the hourly rate is, I want to say, $85 an hour.
That's the outsourced person?
Correct.
Paying $85 an hour?
I think so.
I'm just trying to find it here.
70 an hour.
70 an hour for a code enforcement person, that's $144,000.
They don't work 40 hours a week. Our people only work 30 hours to 35 hours a week salary. We don't 40-hour people.
36 hours a week, I think it is.
It's 7-hour days, not 8-hour days.
Yeah.
So 35 times 7.
But you assume you work 52 days
35 hours,
a year.
Yeah. So are they working the full 35 hours a week for code compliance?
So So right now, we've done some particular details on off-peak hours. Previously, the enforcement staff had pretty much worked 7 to 3, give or take. So we're trying to stagger the hours and do some initial due diligence and surveying to get a sense of what kind of compliance issues we have. Something we'll be presenting to council within the next few months is an initial assessment of what our compliance rates are based on the different categories of violations that exist. Did you have the line item pulled up for the breakdown of the code officer?
Yeah, I could explain it a little bit.
Sure.
So we have two companies and then two different rates. Prior provider was charging us $85 an hour, and which didn't work out, and we changed it. The current one is $70 an hour. So $70 an hour times 40 times 52.
They work 40 hours a
Well,
week.
we work 40 hours a week. Our people only work 35 hours a week, don't they, in your department?
Right.
So why would you do 40 with them?
Well, I have one officer.
I'm sorry?
I have only one officer.
Yeah.
Before it was 3.
Well, they only had one years ago, and he sat half the time he wasn't doing anything.
That's not our ideal.
My
They
point
work in
being
40
was he
hours
didn't
or
have work
35
to
hour
do.
week?
No, there's work to do.
Well, they work 40 hours. We don't pay for their lunchtime.
Plenty of stuff that has to be done.
We don't pay for the
8
lunchtime?
hours a day, 5 days a week.
And not including lunch?
Correct.
Okay.
So 8 hours, so we do have one person. What about our staff person on staff?
Our staff person is the Chela Miguel. She's a tax business officer, and she also.
Right, and she does a lot of work, and I get
Correct,
that. So
yeah.
we only have one person in the field right now,
Correct.
and we're paying that person, did you say 70?
$70 an hour is a
So
loader
that's
rate.
$145,000 a year.
$145,600.
Right. So
We could hire 2.
No, we can't.
We
No,
can't?
no,
Look what
not
we
with
paid
benefits
before.
on top.
We're paying
How much?
$90,000 before
Were we
for
really?
my plus. It's costing you about 30% for benefits. So you're paying about $117,000. Okay.
For one? Well, still, it's, okay.
$70
If you don't like this
loader
person,
rate.
I'll give you a new
That's a
person.
good rate.
True, point.
On,
And then
going
we
back
have
to
to go through
resiliency.
the process of them learning. I mean, we've seen what happened, right? We went through a person and we
We
were
did.
getting so many concerns from residents.
We did. The new officer that we have is excellent, and
Is the person able to handle the workload right now?
very much so.
Okay. Because I'm, again, the garbage can complaints, the stuff, well, look, it's all out there.
Well,
Yeah,
there's
you don't
certain
like
things.
code employees. I know you don't like them, but that's a different story.
Always calling it.
Yeah,
Jake,
exactly.
where is this in our
They
budget?
hover around
I
it.
get my share
Where
fair,
is
don't-
this line item in our
fair
budget?
share.
It's on page,
Yeah, I can't find it
44?
either.
Which one?
It's line item.
No, we're on 46.
24,100,
40.
under professional services. So we have $17,500 for part-time zoning planner.
What page are you on here?
Oh, here we go.
What?
44, you said?
No.
Can't be.
Line item is,
No, what page?
Professional services?
I'm looking at my iPad, sir. I don't have the page number.
page 52 of 114.
52.
So the building is separate division from planning and zoning.
There
So
we go. I
There
found
we
it.
go.
But it's weird because it's under planning and zoning though, right?
Right, so the intent is that pursuant to the Florida Building
5-2.
Code, building expenditures need to be used to building activities. Planning and zoning are the enforcement of the zoning code, so we're staying true to that. I think,
But I'm looking at the line item on zoning and planning, 177,500. That has nothing to do with code enforcement, but it says code
Yes, it does.
what
compliance
page are you on?
restructure. Oh,
That's where it is.
oh, it's under zoning. Okay. Oh, I see it.
Page 52.
Okay. Thank you.
Speaking of resiliency, on the report that you gave to, on all the stuff that you've done in staff, for a layman, I don't know if it's true. It would seem to me that the building, planning, and zoning people would be close to, or closer to what resiliency is, or whatever. And do we have people there that are capable to either by better training, or more training, or a new job, rather than bringing somebody new and find out 6 months to figure out?
with
I could
regard
be
to,
wrong.
with
Building and
regard to
zoning,
which
planning and
position?
zoning are people who literally are out looking at the environment.
For enforcement purposes or for
I'm
resilience?
talking about the resiliency officer.
I think there are definitely already embedded in the building official's role to maintain the flood elevation certificates for homes that are built. That is a responsibility pursuant to the building code of the building official. The building official has a wealth of knowledge, has been with us for a very long time. I think that there is a need, and you see a slight allocation for some additional support to be able to facilitate his work in managing and administering the floodplain management process a bit better. I think that there is room for improvement there.
Yeah, but Manager, my question was not that, is there people in this department that you could, with time, think about the possibility that either A, by further training, or B, for a new job, to fill the resiliency role?
We have reclassified a permit clerk. We didn't need as many permit clerks precisely for that role to focus on implementing these resilience projects. So the answer is yes, and we've done it.
But I'm talking about the senior person that we authorized to sign.
In other words,
is it correct for me to assume that building and planning and zoning had a lot to do with that checklist of things that you accomplished?
No.
Because they are literally out on the streets, correct?
Yeah, those were more, that was really more the efforts of the
and
Public Works.
I put them both together since he got up there to speak for both of them. I'm just trying to find out, sir, if there's a talent in here that can be enhanced in these two departments, because already the knowledge of knowing this community, enhance it by education and or salary incrementation, et cetera. I just plant that seed in your mind.
Yes, we've done both. So a permit clerk is on a professional track, as well as a GIS specialist is on a professional track, one in building and one in public works.
Yeah, I would like to hire local if it's possible, particularly the good people that we have in here.
And one of them is local.
Okay.
Just to go back, yeah. So we have $160,000 allocated for one officer outsourced. Does it have to be $160,000? Because I would think it would be more of a savings. I mean, I agree with Mike. I know where Ed's coming from too. Hiring a person may not be the thing to do, but if you did hire a person, they could, with benefits and car and everything, probably fall underneath that $160,000 for one person. Shouldn't $160,000 be maybe $120,000 if we're outsourcing it? Do they need to work 40 hours a week?
I think what you'll see over time, as the building inspectors and the disciplines begin to take ownership of enforcement of the building code without any support from the code officers, and as we've also asked that field staff in other departments help let us know when there are compliance issues. So police officers when they're in the field, parks folks when they're in the field, when I'm out, when you guys are out, take pictures and you send us information. When residents provide us with information, that we're implementing a citizen response module that would allow folks to take pictures of issues in the field and let us know. And with that, with the automation of those systems, I think and once we become more in compliance and folks are sort of self-regulating more, you'll have less of a need. So I think the contracted model, for all those reasons plus reasons previously stated, is the right way to go. We're not where we need to be yet, and we acknowledge that, and I think you will see this cost go down as the other existing staff members kind of elevate their service levels.
Yeah, because my question is not which model to use, just whether since we're using this model, do you think the $160,000 is actually the correct amount? It shouldn't be less.
Not yet. We haven't maintained this. We have not achieved the level of service that we need yet.
Jake, is your contract with using Cawley for this stuff?
There's MT, Cosley, and CAP.
Right. Sorry, okay, so when you make a deal with them, is that 40 hours a week, or can you use it 30 hours a week?
As needed.
When they give you $70 an hour, how many hours do you commit for? As needed?
As needed, it could be as low as what's
the minimum hours per day you have to guarantee it?
Has to be 4-hour minimum.
4 hours, okay, fine. So you got to guarantee him 4 hours a day?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. That was my question. Thank you.
On it's a very important issue here on the page 44 of the building. Are they not going to have any gas on their tanks this year?
My guess is
vehicle fuel zero.
When we did the restructuring, we eliminated the vehicles and all of the costs associated with those.
Oh, I thought it was joking, but they eliminated the vehicles.
So the outsource is paying their own fuel.
Correct.
It's all included in the price. Okay.
So we're on Public Works now. Is there anything else
Building
on
and
this?
zoning.
No, are we good? Does anybody have any other questions on building and zoning? Okay, let's go to Public Works.
You want to move it?
Now, let's just keep going
Okay.
through, let's try and,
So
Peter Dunn.
shifting to Public Works, we've spoken a lot about, resiliency and some of the things that we're doing here. I think, we can really field any questions, I think.
well, I guess my question is maintenance. I mean, I think that, and I've spoken to you, I've spoken to the manager, maintenance has got to be improved. I think that's one of the biggest issues that people come up with when they talk about public works. I've seen it in terms of our roadways. I'll give you an example, and I know that they just did the repairs, or, St. Christopher's is connecting to the pipes, so they had to tear up Fernwood right in front of St. Christopher's Fernwood entrance. Are they going to fix that? Is that on St. Christopher's to take care of that? And how long is that going to take? Okay, I want to make sure that goes back to looking normal. But like the speed tables look bad. The round, I know we're talking about what we're going to do with the traffic circles. Those have to be worked on. The parks that, people are pointing out things, gazebos. There's just a lot to do. And this is not, you're not doing your job. It's, do you have enough money here to handle all this stuff?
No, we don't, but
Okay.
let's answer that. So I agree 100%. The roads are in very bad condition and it's not except the standard, but we have a number of projects that are coming way, our undergrounding, stormwater improvements, roadways. So it will be
foolish to do the roads if we're going to
correct,
redo them later.
Correct.
Okay.
So we
Get it.
as we go with this project, the stormwater is the biggest one. I don't know where the undergrounding is going to land, but at this point, once we go with the stormwater, we're going to do complete street construction.
Okay.
It'll be addressed at that point.
And then at the same time, I think our resiliency officers should be talking about how do we make those roads more permeable so that they can drain better.
Correct.
Your employees in Public Works work 35 hours or 40-hour weeks?
Everybody works 35 hours.
Everybody's 35. Thank you.
There is one employee that is an at-will employee that works
But I'm talking about
more.
everybody's 35. Okay. I didn't.
Why is that?
I don't know if it's only building and zoning or everybody.
Well, why 35 hours? The collective
Well, because
bargaining?
it's more than 34 and less than 36.
Why is it-
pursuant
why
to the
35
collective bargaining
hours?
agreement.
It's the village policy.
Is that,
I think
again, the collective bargaining or something?
That was done years
No,
ago.
I think it's
Yeah, I
probably,
still want to answer to my question. Why is it, normal America is 40 hours? Why is it 35 hours?
I'll give you a suggested
Oh, here.
answer. My suggestion would be, we probably were trying to build in some sort of FLSA protection
No.
because.
He wasn't here years ago. Basically, they reduced it, building and zoning. I can't remember how many years ago. They decided to go from 40-hour week to a 35-hour week. And then when they got a contract, when they became unionized, that's when it became institutionalized.
But the salaries did not adjust accordingly.
Well,
No.
No, it's great.
are they hourly
These are
employees, most of
wonderful
them?
meetings.
Aren't most of
So
them
you work
hourly
less, you
employees?
get paid
No.
the same.
Really? That's interesting.
Jake, did you just say you don't think you have enough money in here? Or because from what was budgeted to what was spent year to date, I realize these numbers are June, but it seems like there was a lot of money budgeted for different types of maintenance things that weren't spent.
Right, when I say we don't have enough money, I mean village-wide resurfacing, reconstruction of roadways, we don't.
Okay.
I have enough money to repair the potholes or some pavement repairs here and there as needed, but not village-wide.
Okay, and is there a reason that money was budgeted and not spent? Like tree trimming is way below.
Correct, that's actually tree trimming. I have one contract sitting on my desk for $100,000 that we're gonna have to probably bring back the next council meeting for approval. So at the end, we'll be very close to our budgeted number.
At the end of the actual year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jack, my main concern is the beach maintenance. I see you budgeted almost $500,000, and I saw year-to-date, you spent $150,000. You had budgeted for the year $425, and then I hear, obviously, with the weed, et cetera, things are terrible and it's worse beaches, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So we have all this extra money which has been budgeted, and we haven't spent it. Why are we budgeting even more money? Although it's not much more money, because you're transferring 50,000 into it, so it's not a lot more money. But the point is it enough money to take care of the beaches with the conditions we have right now? And if not, do we need more money, or is it too much money?
Right, depends on which direction we're gonna go. We may need more money. Currently, the enhanced service is $234,000. Yes, we have extras. In the last year's budget hearings, we put, I believe, $150,000 to hold seaweed as needed. This year, we take it case by case, and I look at it myself and authorize it myself along with the manager when we decide to hold away. Because sometimes, if it's a lot coming in, it's almost the same thing as throwing your money in the ocean, is holding it away. So we don't necessarily spend $150,000 just because we have it.
No.
So this year, I try to make the calls as I felt fit, and so we haven't spent it. Now, we are trying to have agreement with City of Miami to possibly take the seaweed up to Virginia Key. Now, if that works out, we will need additional $250 on top of $474.
So that, we don't have enough then under that condition?
Correct.
Under that scenario?
Yeah.
So what do you think the probability of having to do that is?
It's very likely to happen. It's on the works.
Good to pretty good.
No.
And what are we doing as far as considering burning the stuff, or I should say converting it into energy? I know that the...
We're burying currently.
Sorry?
No,
burning.
Our,
Burning or
our sustainability people, they come up with something. No, not composting. They came up with a device
Bricks.
that people are using. What's it called?
So there's a few different technologies that we've looked at. One technology is a mechanical process that actually converts the seaweed into essentially a dirt that can then be used to create like bricks for building materials. So we're looking at that. We also, as I had mentioned earlier, we're working with the folks from the Zero Net Waste and the composting folks at the Presbyterian and the University of Miami to seek grant funding from DEP to be able to compost seaweed. As we know, the seaweed problem is widespread, and it's
That's what I'm talking about. So, but I saw there's another thing they recommended, which was using it to convert it to
Energy.
small, basically generator that uses seaweed. It's in
so
the
we've
thing.
seen some other technologies. Until they can get the price down, they're not going to be marketable.
Okay, good.
But we're watching them, and we're trying to help pilot some of these programs and give betas and give them our seaweed to test and things like that.
What is the cost for us to haul away? We don't bury anything, because I think the practicing of burying it is horrible, and I think it has a lot to do with our water quality, which is, I think, one of our biggest issues that we're dealing with. If we decide to say, hey, this year, if the thing doesn't work out with Miami, how much does it cost to haul it out every single time we have the sargassum coming in? No, $250 was to take it to Miami, but that might not happen.
So our contractor has a contract with
Worst
City of
case
Key West for the exact, the length of the beach. And Key West pays about $1 million a year. And I negotiated up to, what was it, roughly about $750,000. That's $750 to take it to Virginia Key. Now, if that doesn't work and I have to take it out of to mainland, that's about 96,000 cubic yard. So,
What was the other amount, cubic yard?
96,000
No,
cubic
before
yard.
to
With
Miami?
750,000 a year.
But how much is that a cubic yard?
That number, I don't have it handy. That's
Yeah.
based on the contractor's computation. Some months will be very little, some will be a lot. And that's based on their experience in Key West and also Key Biscayne.
Because for me, I think from a policy standpoint, I think our beaches really need help. And I think we need to start looking at these different issues that are causing our water, that could be causing our water, or not helping our water situation. And I'm for one is that we need to do whatever we can to get rid of the seaweed, because when you bury this stuff,
No, that's not.
you're incubating it. It's covered with feces from birds, and it's living organisms that's decaying, and we're sticking it under sand that is heated up all day long, and the water's just constantly coming in and out, and it's just pulling this bacteria back into the water. I don't know if it is the cause of it, but it's definitely not helping it. And it's definitely not helping our hotel and our condos and the houses and everybody who uses our beach. I barely go there that often now because it's just in bad shape. And I think whatever practice we're doing is not good enough. And this level of service that we have here, I don't think cuts it.
So if you look at page 59 of 114, that's the breakdown of what the current beach maintenance contract entails. So Councilmember Moss is correct. So far, we do have ongoing scientific studies with the University of Miami as well as Waterkeepers. We also monitor the data that is collected through the Department of Health as well as DEP and DERM. And all of the data sets that we're looking at, I think from where we are last year to where we are now, I think we know a lot more. And Councilmember Moss is correct. One of the indicators that we're seeing, the highest levels of bacteria are basically from the high tide line till about knee height in the water. And I think when our initial beach management plan was established, decades ago, the seaweed wasn't nearly as bad as what it is. The last 3 years, we've consecutively seen record-breaking amounts of seaweed. And I think the integration process, although arguably manageable for some standards, I think from the feedback that we're getting, may not be tolerable for us. So we have spoken to our contractor to see what it would cost to do the hauling. One consideration Councilmember Moss and I have spoken about was you have to balance when you do haul. The seaweed is sticky, and you pull some of the sand off of the beach. So you have to balance the rate at which you haul the seaweed with the pace at which we can renourish the beach. So
yeah, we'll take 10% of whatever we're hauling is going to be sand. And we have to calculate that.
Time for pizza.
But you don't know how many cubic yards we would need to haul typically in a year. You wouldn't know that.
We have some rough numbers. It's about 2,000 yards a month on average.
2,000 cubic yards a month.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about $2.3 million to
Correct.
haul sargassum off. That's a lot.
Is there any federal assistance to any community dealing with this same issue?
So we're looking at it. I don't know right now. There's no program that we're actively engaged in. Like I said, one of the things we're looking at is with UM and the composting folks with DEP to see what they're looking at. When we were in DC, some of the ideas that were talked about looking for higher level support. In particular, Representative Duran went on the village's behalf and met with the Chief Resilience Officer for the state. And I know one of the issues that he was particularly interested in helping us with was the water quality and the sargassum issue. There has bbeen discussion of, perhaps a declaration of emergency with regard to the seaweed. It's all the way from Key West up. All the entire coast is facing this, and what I think we need to manage expectations, and the satellite imagery shows the sargassum just coming in football fields, and so it's not the best news, but it is a reality, and the solutions are not. There are new technologies emerging. We're looking at them, but I think as you see it, it is costly, and there are pros and cons to all of the solutions that are before you.
And the extra $250K to require to haul to Virginia Key, will that mean we're not burying anymore? We're hauling everything?
Correct. That includes hauling every day.
Everything. So there's no more burying practice. It would be like we haul it there.
Correct.
All year long. I would recommend that we put that in then and add that there. I think that's important, at least that, and see if we can get it done. Because that's a fraction of what it would cost to haul it out completely.
And I think that's great, and I think we appreciate it. I think the residents would like that a lot, and I think as the elected board, I think that the coordination with the City of Miami, I think the mayor has done a great job working with Commissioner Ken Russell on moving this, and we've been working on the staff side. So
and it's highly probable, you think?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Jake took some time to do some of the renderings and the engineering, or not engineering level, but some of the renderings required for the geography to be able to bring the trucks around. We've done site visits. We've done some schematics. We've presented the permit applications on behalf of the city, so it's pretty much ready to go for them.
Well, I don't know what you guys. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so if we go in that direction of the hauling, if we could put a request in for an update back, maybe after you start, I don't know, maybe a couple of months, if we could get sort of an impact statement to us, not like official, but of this concern that we have about removing sand, that if we could see, once we actually
Quantify.
start it,
We could
if there's
survey it.
some way to get a read on what the impact is on the beach?
You could do that.
Okay.
Assuming that we can solidify.
Nothing like,
agreement.
you don't have to hire anyone to do it, just, anecdotal evidence is fine, but I think the council would like that feedback. I know I would.
Right. So I
Can
would
we
say
move
thank you
on?
in advance to the city of Miami for entertaining us on this and working.
Can I
with
move
us.
building?
Nope.
No,
I'm not
I'd like
ready.
to make the motion to increase it by 250,000, that item.
Just out of curiosity, though, I don't know if we have the space to put 250 in this budget. Should we put that in our CIP?
Whichever. We can.
What's your recommendation, manager?
What happens to the budget if we add the 250?
No, so I don't think we have it unless. Did you back up the debt service on it? Okay, so two other pots of money, millage, with millage being tapped out, you have the working capital fund balance, and then you could borrow. So right now at the CIP with the 2.75 million, we assumed 6 months of interest-only payments at, I think, 2.35%, which yielded about 32,000 worth of debt service. It's very ballpark rough estimate, but those are your three. So millage, right now, we're pretty much tapped out with the changes that we've done so far.
How do you come up with 250?
That's what
That's
they
the
have here.
estimate that we have.
In line, in
They
page
put agreement
59.
with Miami and additional 250,000 required if hauled to Virginia Key.
I also am interested, it's a smaller item, but to try to analyze the iguana problem,
Ah, you beat me to it.
Yes, I think there was
which
some
needs some
very,
money funded towards that.
there was some very well-written emails that I think did a good job giving problem statement and some potential solutions. And I think Todd did some research for us as our iguana
Our
slayer.
resident iguana expert?
So this year we had 5,000 allocated, and the priority for us, we had some iguanas burrowing in St. Agnes Field that was creating hazards for the kids. So we focused that resource on the fields there, and we were able to manage that. So we're thankful the kids were fine, but the problem I think has gotten worse, and I think we do need to address it.
I mean, the other problem is we need to have some type of interlocal agreement with the county and the state, because the iguanas can just go north or south, and or they can replicate there and come in. So it needs a little bit broader approach probably to be effective.
But having seen this just in my own yard, from last year when we had residents come to this year, the problem is rapidly growing. So I agree with Katie. I would like to see, and we can, in the effort of moving through the budget, we can talk about what types of solutions or what types of things we'd like to see done at a later meeting. But I would like to agree with Katie, I'd like to add something to this budget to commit ourselves to working this problem. I don't know what that would be. We had a conversation earlier today that I thought that, it seems a similar approach would be the way that we dealt with, unfortunately, it seems like perhaps it's back, but white fly, that we need to work this problem similarly since it's on private and public property.
Do we have a whitefly problem right now? Do you know?
So we thought we did before the winter season. We had the experts come down. We surveyed about 10 spots. We kind of monitored it as the temperature got better, and right now we're looking pretty good, but we're continuing to monitor. So
Could we substitute whitefly for iguanas?
I think we could. I don't know that it'll make a dent in the program.
Yeah.
I think the level that we need
is bigger. I get it.
big.
Yeah.
You know what? Maybe we can do it. Given that we don't have the agreement, given that we can't afford the 250 right off the bat, what we can do for the hauling is once we secure the agreement with the city of Miami, we can bring a budget amendment at that time, allocating the funding required.
And figure out how we want to pay for it. Well,
And
unless
figure out how we want to pay for that.
We may have to move some of, okay.
So if we're done with Jake and if the last item is iguanas, maybe we could shift gears a little to Todd for iguanas.
Todd's in charge of iguanas, it's
wanna-
Parks and Rec.
We're going to talk about the recreation department?
Catching
The
iguana
beaches,
day?
we decided
Okay, we
to,
just moved.
we decided to wait and see what happens and then bring it back
All
with
right,
a
let's keep
budget
going.
amendment and decide how to pay for it at that time.
Thank you.
You don't want to move this whole area yet?
I would prefer that,
Okay.
let's just get through and
All right,
We've
so
got-
now
Can
we're
we
going.
hear
to-
from Todd about what he thinks iguana is going to cost year one?
why is Todd in charge of, I'm really curious.
I had just
spaces.
explained, so this year we had a 5,000 allocation for iguanas, and the biggest need was on St. Agnes because the iguanas were burrowing, and so he became the iguana guy.
We had the funding and we had a significant problem at St. Agnes, so I jumped at the opportunity to use the funding to address that area because we were spending a lot of money on maintaining that field. And the iguanas were
The root
spending a lot of
cause.
time doing the exact opposite, burrowing. And once they create a hole and the kids play on the hole, then it gets bigger. And then,
Is that why are the holes were, oh, wow.
yeah, we couldn't figure it out for a while and that's what it
It looked
was.
like Verdun out there a couple of times.
Yeah.
They're starting to do that in my yard.
Yeah, it was a real problem for us, so, and plus the fact that we spot resodded the field over the summer. So we had an investment there, and we wanted to protect it, so. To the iguanas, I called all our island neighbors, and as of now, nobody has a program from the state park to the University of Miami, to the city of Miami, to Miami-Dade County. Nobody has a removal program. So we would be
Pioneers.
we would be like the little green dot doing it ourselves and probably getting inundated from the existing population neighboring us. So I mean, that's just
Can
where we are
talk to
now.
the state park and can we talk to the county and say, hey, this is what we're doing, we should all partner to get rid of this stuff?
The Miami-Dade County is trying to start a program with FWC.
We would be the perfect pilot because we are an island, so
Yeah.
they could have the biggest impact
Right.
in our area in Dade County. So is there a way to start that?
FWC would be doing a state park, Miami-Dade County would be doing a county park, and we would do ours, so.
Or they could do ours
And they could do
because they need us.
We're part of the state and the county.
That's been a new
Is
fun
there
part of
a-
my job, and I'll keep looking to see at all our options.
No, but is there somebody within the county that's specifically working on this?
I spoke to somebody in the county today,
Don't go before the.
but he'll have to put me in touch with the person who's
Don't go before the-
directly negotiating with Florida Wildlife Commission for what their policy will be, how it will be implemented. They have to come to an agreement on how this is going to move forward. And I think once the county and FWC comes to an agreement, it's going to be kind of the roadmap for everybody else.
Okay, well.
It's an invasive species.
Yep.
So it seems like something that we should be eradicating.
It's crazy, we're racing.
Lastly, I know this is a stab in the dark, but if we were to allocate money towards this, what would be a good starting point?
I mean, I guess we could start trapping, continue the trapping on our northernmost and our southernmost and see how what that results are. And that may
Is
give
there
us,
any way to take advantage of when we have a cold snap and they all go to sleep,
well,
getting them out of here?
I can
Budget
tell
the
you.
money.
Yeah, there's
I don't want to talk about,
Yeah.
we got to talk money here. I'm
Is it
sorry.
good,
but
the
we got
budget
plenty-
that
but
you guys
I
do?
agree
We
with
have
your
no.
point. We need,
We haven't
Okay.
budgeted
how much money
anything.
do you think we have to budget for iguanas? Removal, in all seriousness.
Give us
I-
a number.
25?
I thought
I think it's gonna cost a lot more. The problem is severe.
Yes.
The problem is severe.
I mean, I think
What
if
would you get? What would you suggest?
I mean, if we had 5,000 that got us St. Agnes with a very tailored, targeted program, I mean,
You're not going to question me?
But
Yeah, I mean,
Ed, how much money do you want to spend on iguana?
no.
whatever you give me will
we'll
get
start.
used.
Yeah, we'll do the
Whatever
best
number
we
we come
can.
with, and we can kind of give you
I
a,
mean,
the-
okay.
It's a
Seriously.
problem.
All right, well, then 50,000, let's put 50,000 toward it. Do we agree? Do we have consensus on council? Move.
I'll give you some data on what that results in.
Do I have a
Thank
second?
you.
Thank you. Second. Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, anything else for Parks and Rec that we're concerned about?
We haven't gotten.
No, but I had a quick
sorry.
question. I'm sorry,
Sorry.
this, I'm going backwards and I apologize, but we have in here 70,000 to replace all the trees on Westwood.
You want to hold off on that?
Oh, Ed is gonna, that was Ed's item.
He just walked in. I wanted him to be here. I'm not going,
Ed, come
This is a
back.
tough time of year to talk about that because now they're actually in bloom.
they're in bloom. to do one specific street seems like a Band-Aid when I know that we still haven't replaced trees
I agree.
after Irma.
Agree too.
I would like to
Opposed to
have that
the-
a broader
The
scope.
village beautification, they should do some sort of, there
Well,
should be.
there
a-
is a tree
Yeah,
plan.
make a motion to remove it?
Yes.
All right.
Would, second.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
There goes your iguana money.
That was the only thing in his briefing he wanted.
Okay.
We're on
Don't
police.
leave early.
I'm done.
Yes.
Okay,
I'm done.
Parks and
We got
Recreation.
15 minutes, guys. We gotta rock and roll.
Um,
No, I'm on police. Oh, I was good with all of it, but
Anything for Parks and Rec?
I was done with Todd.
All right, Todd, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So police department, so a couple of things we can highlight in the police department.
With all due respect, let's go through, is there any changes we need to make from budget one, first budget hearing to the second? Because we still have CIP to do, and I don't want to stay late. So are there any changes? Is there anything that stands out to people that people have questions about? I'd like to focus on what we have questions
On the
about.
remaining stuff, all
On
items?
police. No,
Oh,
on
on
police.
police,
Are there questions
okay.
that you have about police?
No, I'm okay with
Anything
police.
that you have concerns about? Want to move this along, you know, I'm not thrilled that we're doing this. I feel like we never got a budget workshop and we're kind of, but we're up against the gun and I want to make sure we have enough time to finish out the CIP.
I mean, I think we had a
Please.
budget workshop. It didn't.
And I'm not saying-
I'm not gonna.
I'm pretty good on
Do
that.
that.
What's that with where are you at?
I would note that there was a,
Police?
there was a discrepancy with the line items of the Rickenbacker Causeway transponders. That's really the cost of SunPass. And the transponders are the 2,100.
So those four line items,
Yeah.
sort of, they missed the line. Move all four lines up.
88 of 114. Everything needs to be shifted down one. It's just, it's typographical, but for the record, so you know.
Oh, I get you.
All right.
Did you jump Parks and Rec already?
Yeah, we already did that.
Did you have an issue? We can go back to
Yeah, I
that
mean,
if
I
you-
needed to
See,
go.
we didn't move it. If we
Yeah,
moved
well,
it, you would have had a problem.
Well, I
but
wanted
now-
to know if the $1.2 million for 530 is in the budget?
In CIP, sir.
Huh?
That's
CIP. It's not in the operating budget, it's in CIP.
But that is not, as per the conversations last time, and the minutes reflected, we did not approve it, we just told you to go back and lower that number.
Correct, so
And it
it's-
has to come back to us,
Correct, sir.
so we're clear on that.
Yes.
On the police, I want to know where the, is the initiative, I guess, it's been talked about bicycles. And
Yes, so-
high- Is it in the budget?
I'm sorry, about what?
Bicycles.
So not only is it in the budget, but one of our negotiated key performance indicators is actually the number of bike patrol routes that we do. So we'll be getting monthly data on the number of bike patrols that we do.
So the short answer to my question, we have it, and we're finally going to
Beyond bikes.
implement, and I
Yes, sir.
forwarded to you the other alternative vehicle that the city of Coral Gables is using. Have you followed up on that?
In which vehicle is that?
Well, they're kind of, I sent it to you, and this mayor sent you a copy of the memo, and the chief called me. Kind of a, you have a lot of things, but
Yeah, I'm not recalling the vehicles. What-
okay, they're sort of like, I'll send you all the picture. I thought I had sent it to her, and I did, because the response to the mayor is that you would be the person to be in touch. You don't recall Coral Gables?
So we,
And you
for
said that
the
I would
electric,
follow up with the manager of Coral Gables?
for the, with the,
No, they're like,
Oh, the gem cars that they have,
yeah,
a
they're public
civilian that
service, and it
goes
may,
out.
the
and it may
service
not be
cars, the
relevant to
service
us.
aid cars,
But
yes.
they have had success, and I always ready to learn from other people's practices. It may be totally irrelevant to us, but he responded very fast, the manager responded very fast, and the chief of police, we ought to just look at it. It may not, but so
Like the
bottom
idea
line
of
is
bicycles.
the bicycles are on. Okay, that's good news. I have no more problem with that.
Anybody? Fire?
I'm fine with fire.
I'm saying fire rescue, sorry.
I'm okay with
They got all
fire.
excited when I said fire.
Fire rescue is okay.
Yeah, for me, it's okay.
so tab 19 takes us back to CIP.
Perfect.
So just to kind of recap where we are on the revenue side, your three sources are your transfer from working capital, your loan proceeds, and the millage. I think, so millage, are we tapped out? So we'll verify where we are with millage.
Did we get the iguana line item in there?
I'm sorry?
Did we get the iguana line
Yeah,
item?
so we put the 50,000 in the open space maintenance line item in Todd's budget. One adjustment that we're going to make now, due to the fire transport fees, we have to make that revision on the pension contribution.
Right.
So sort of high level where we landed, we're still building out the 5-year CIP. One thing that is important to me is that each project is very well defined. There's a work plan. There is a budget that's supported by engineering, opinion, and probable cost. Some of the projects have that more well-developed than others. Based on the feedback that we got at first reading, there were some projects I think wisely are focusing this year on improving our maintenance standards and getting things up before we start investing in some of the traffic circle replacements and re-engineering those. So we shifted some of those projects out. We added in the $600,000 toward the shoreline protection project. We moved the $83,000 for solar energy. One thing that we miscategorized, and we can move it, Crandon Bike and Ped study, we actually put it in quality of life. We need to move that to public safety, so bear with us. We'll make that transfer. We also added the community center expansion back into the budget, and so right now, your bottom line for fiscal '20 proposed is $7.3 million. And as I had stated, this assumes the debt service on the $2.75 million. If you look on the comments on the right, we call out which items make sense to us to borrow for, sort of as a first pass, but it is entirely a policy decision if you want to pay as you go, or issue debt service, or tap into reserves.
And again, we have no money coming from
So
our.
we just kind of readjusted everything, 183,971. So that'll be, so if you can make the transfer to CIP for that.
Say again?
That's coming from our.
183,971 is our transfer to CIP.
183?
Right, so at the 3.195, if that's the will of the council, with the changes that we've made, you can transfer over 183,000 to CIP.
183 more can come into here from there.
Given all the.
Not on top of what we had, that's the new number.
Of 3.195.
Hold on, Councilmember
I got a
Segarra.
question about, I don't know if I'm getting ahead, but the Village Hall parking. You have down $1.5 million, but it's for fiscal year '21.
Right,
We
we're not
pushed that
gonna,
out
we
a
know we're
year.
not gonna do it this year.
Is
We're not-
that known?
I think we're pretty much, we anticipate we're not gonna get
Isn't
it done.
politics? So if it happens, it happens.
Right.
Yeah, but we have a working capital. We can do that, and we can just move it over if we need to at the end of the day, or finance it. And we can make an adjustment from it.
Just in case the opportunity pops up.
Exactly.
Right, understood. Yeah, I think.
That
we'd
would be a
finance
great opportunity to pop up.
All right, so you have.
And just to be clear, and so people understand that we are budgeting money for these things, but some of these things have already been approved, but many of them have not yet been approved by this council.
And some might not go forward.
And
Other
some
things
may
might
not go
pop up.
forward.
Having said that, I would really like to have in this list the things that we feel like we are wedded to, because it's easy to put a bunch of stuff in here and then if we don't do
Every
half
year
of it,
push
it
it
just
off.
looks bad.
I
So,
agree with you,
I
but
don't-
10 minutes to 11, I'm not gonna make my
I have a
decisions
question
on-
about the revenues and other sources on transfer from transportation fund. You have in the comments, traffic circles, 274,000.
Oh, good
Did you
point.
just say that we're not doing that?
Yes, good point.
Where is
Because
it?
that's going to have a pretty big impact then, right? That's almost $300,000.
Where are you,
Yes.
Allison?
So Councilmember McCormick, or Vice Mayor McCormick brought up a point. So there are certain projects that are eligible for restricted revenues that are related to transportation projects. And the traffic circles, the 274,000, we had moved that, we had pushed that out a year so that that eligible expense is no longer, that is a.
So where does that go to?
So the 674 has to go back to,
400.
right, it has to go back
And where
to
does that money
PTP.
come off expenditures, though?
It already did.
Traffic.
Well, that's a problem.
No, it's a wash, so.
How is it a wash?
So, because we pushed the project out too. We're not doing the project. Remember, we said we're gonna focus on maintenance in 20 and we're not gonna re-engineer
Right,
until
but if we have the
21.
income for 20 and that goes down to 400 and we had,
Your balancing number, yes, your balancing number now changes, but both the revenue and the expense should have moved over together. So now, you guys follow?
I would like to speak about the solar energy line item too.
wait, hold on. I want to make sure that we know what we're doing here. What's our number right now? 'Cause
Just give us
my
a
calculations are
minute,
correct,
please.
and we're down, we don't have
We're down the
181
exact
moving
number we
over.
just
We're
took,
down,
274.
we're over negative 90 approximately.
I don't know where you're talking.
Sorry, looking at page 105.
Yes.
There's 674 transfer from transportation fund, 674.
Okay.
Well, 274 of that, Vice Mayor has pointed out that we're not doing the traffic circles of 274, so
And that's spent
that
directly
comes
to-
off, so that number will drop to 400,000, right? So if that number comes down to 400,000, that means our total revenues are actually 7,200,000 and I can't do math right now, but 56,672 and if our expenditures are 7,320,672, we're now short.
But
by
you're
some
moving-
money.
so You're moving that amount out, so it should balance itself. with
No,
the
but we had
revenue.
already moved the
We'd already
expenditure,
moved
we
the
hadn't moved the
expenditure out.
revenue.
Oh,
Right,
but we didn't move that.
right.
It's not there.
She's right.
So we would have to then increase our capital, working capital, to cover that.
We have
We
negative
have to increase
90,000.
some other,
Jennifer.
right.
Jennifer.
And it
either
would be about
debt-
$90,000, you said?
It's approximately 90, is that correct?
So we're
About
gonna go
90,000?
We're
670
running
from
the
the-
numbers now.
Well, it was 181 was coming over, right? 181 in working capital?
Approximately 181.
And so,
Question,
Uh-huh.
do we need the full million for the community center expansion for next year, or can we get away with less?
Todd, do we need the full million for next year for the community center expansion, or can we get away with less?
Where's the 4 million?
He doesn't have to spend it, he can just have it appropriated.
Well, but the question is, we're gonna have to budget it
Can we
somewhere.
budget less
That's right.
for the next year?
Or does that put you in the craw?
While Todd's coming up, can we get a motion to extend
Motion to extend for 5
Second.
minutes
after 11?
after 11, sorry.
Second.
Yeah, I mean, the goal is the,
For the community expansion, we only have 1 million there for this year.
Well, that's just,
And that's for the architectural drawings, putting all
Exactly.
that stuff together.
Does that cost $1 million?
Yeah, typically that would cost about $1 million.
we're talking about, $14, $15 million project, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
I think the answer is you do need it.
Yes.
Chief, about that fire truck? He's outside.
Oh,
there it is. Oh.
It's been approved twice, the fire truck.
He's got his
all
on.
good.
He's got his entourage.
I made a motion
Look at
last
them. They're
week. and-
both all fiery right now.
I think we just repurposed part of it.
In fact, now that Ed is here, why don't you get 2 fire trucks? Okay.
Let's figure it out, folks.
Some questions on general stuff, or are we still?
Well, we gotta find $100,000, I believe, right? We have to find the total of 274?
Oh,
The end,
okay.
are
Out
you
of
at the end?
CIP?
Okay, wait, are we at the end of the discussion, or? 'cause
No,
it's
unfortunately, we're just getting into it now.
Just a short question.
Yes, sir.
No, I mean, whenever.
Please,
it's
go
in-
ahead. No, go ahead.
No, you told me to, we have the green bike lane,
Yes,
and we still have the mast
yes.
that hasn't been approved? Or it's just that this is a good time to talk?
Yes, sir.
This is, I'm sure controversial. I'm glad that Bill's not here. The bicycling thing, it's not politically correct because we're all into ecology and everything else. But at the end of the day, in America, or in Miami, I should say, unlike Europe, Copenhagen, Amsterdam, et cetera, it's basically a sport. There isn't anybody I know in Key Biscayne that goes to work, except actually Mr. Durham, on his bicycle.
And Mr. Wanenkoff.
Well, maybe 2 or 3.
No, there's a bunch.
There's a handful, but
Okay.
they're different.
I have expressed before a concern to the manager that I know we got a $100,000 grant, and it all sounds great, but and you all know that our community is almost united on the fact that they had a lot of problems with the bicycles and the attitudes they have and the way they offend people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they basically are contained to around the area of the 7-Eleven and Oasis. By painting the ongoing thing to the end of our island, it's going to invite that same group of pelotons who are in a sport, not any different that I like basketball or tennis. It's in a sport. We're going to invite them to come into our neighborhood. It increases the already enough problems that the police has in enforcing some degree of order and civility with our citizens. And I really, the more I think about it, and as a matter of fact, I had mentioned this to the manager on several occasions, and then in fact, there was a very wonderful letter in this week's Islander about it. A gentleman who they're out of control. We all know they're out of control. They do not respect the green lanes through Crandon Park. They simply do not. It's a miracle that we haven't had more accidents. By doing what seems to be politically correct and taking it all the way into our city, I think we're doing our citizens a disservice. And I know it's $100,000, plus we would have to return the $100,000 for the state. But unless I hear otherwise from police, I think it also puts an additional burden on police. I like to keep Key Biscayne private as much as I can, and this will be just a perfect excuse for them to continue into our island, and I simply think it would be a bad policy.
Mike, go ahead. You want to speak to it?
I have some thoughts on this. As someone that used to bike at some point and actually was a victim of a hit and run on the Rickenbacker, the Pelotons, I don't think this green lane is going to affect the Pelotons one way or another. And I think that it is really more for our citizens that are riding on bikes on Crandon, and a lot of them end up on the sidewalks. So while I'm not necessarily advocating for or against the green lane, I don't think that those bikers are going to be impacted by that. And I don't think it'll draw them out here. I think they come, and typically what keeps them from going through Crandon is the fact that there's all those driveways and intersections that require stops. So they typically turn around before. And just like
stops that they don't obey.
Just like, the green lane certainly didn't keep them within that lane because they use one lane and sometimes the entire roadway. But then there are quite a few bikers that follow the rules, and they will end up in that green lane. So I personally think there is an improvement in safety for our community by having that. Whether or not, I don't even think $200,000 is enough. Isn't the whole thing $1 million to do?
So the whole program, the reason why we're doing that first phase was we got the legislative appropriation for 100, which required 100 match.
Right.
The entire program is closer to $1 million, but
Oh
the
my
20 allocate for all the, not just the bike lanes, for all of the Crandon bike and ped safety improvements.
Not for green.
I am
Not for green
I'm a
paint.
bike,
So, I mean, I would be more opposed because it's $100,000 of $1 million project, and it may not, we have to commit $900,000 of the million.
Well, I think
So-
I think one of the reasons why the Pelotons don't come through is really because of the brick crosswalks in the intersections, and they don't like any type of bumps that can mess up.
I don't want to get into
thing.
Pelotons tonight. I mean, his point about them is completely valid. My understanding was that the green lanes were going to make it safer. There's some sort of, Chief, you may be able to speak to this, I don't know, but I always understood that once you put the green lanes in, there's some sort of requirements to the travel through green lanes that in terms of cycling safety.
Yes, and
now, am I wrong?
There are So a couple of things. The county is already going to be doing what are called the conflict points. So those areas that there has been a higher level of incident based on the county's data records, they're already going ahead and going to be doing those conflict points. So really what we're talking about is kind of covering the gaps between those. So I'm not sure if the conflict points alone, addressing that may already.
No, I am known for being always on my bike, and I'm always on the sidewalk because of my own decisions on safety. I've been around the Peloton Center because I used to hang around. Now I'm back to hanging around the Oasis in the mornings now that they finally fixed it after 3 years. And I know all of them, and I know the bads, and there are a couple of good ones, 2 or 3. It is a sport, and we're spending $1 million, basically $900,000 for a sport. It is a sport.
Oh,
This
yes,
is
I
not
just don't think
Copenhagen.
that's why we're spending the money.
No, but we're going to spend $900,000.
No, not on bicycle. No, this
Well,
is pedestrian
I
safety.
am telling you, I feel as strongly as you can think, all my instincts.
Okay.
My knowledge of the crowd that there's there, the experience I have had,
I'll
the
make a
way
motion for
they
10 more
they
minutes.
treat our residents, the way they treat our residents who happen to be women.
Mr. Laredo, we have to cut
And
you off
I
for a
would
second.
think that it would be a mistake to do this, so I don't
second
know
the
how to
motion?
fix it.
Okay.
10 minutes.
For 10 more minutes?
No, 10 more minutes.
We got to knock this out.
May I have a second?
I seconded.
I'm not going to
All those in
vote for
favor?
any more.
Aye.
Approve.
Okay.
I'm not voting
So
for any more, so let's
you-
get
if
it
you'd
done.
like to make a motion on that, you're welcome to make a
Okay.
motion.
I'll make a motion that we do not begin the process of, specifically the green lanes on the bicycles.
Don't
into our-
budget for the green lines. We're still gonna,
Just one quick question, though. We did have our rep and our senator come here, and we accepted $100,000
I
for
understand.
them. Is that,
we'd have to give the money back, I would assume. But is there going to be a vote? Is there a second for this motion? Okay. So,
I don't have,
motion dies for lack of a second.
I think we're making a big mistake. I hope I'm wrong, but second
Madam
thing-
Manager? Oh, sorry.
The second thing, or a couple of quick questions on staff compensation overall,
Yes.
and I'm using rough. I see an automatic 2% increase, is that correct?
So pursuant to the collective bargaining agreements, slightly over depending on the age.
Okay,
but yes.
2%.
COLA, yes.
And then there's another 4%, more or
Right.
less. I rounded up to 6. What is that 4%? Is that based on merit?
That is based on a merit, yes.
Or merit meaning that people get appraised, they get evaluated, and they get.
Yes, sir.
They do not get a 4% automatic.
Correct.
Okay. On the Mercer group that we approved before.
Right.
Because hopefully, one thing that we've learned this year that I hope you can give us a commitment today is that you start this process a lot earlier on the budget so that we actually should have a meeting, that this meeting should be a leisurely meeting to kind of having
Finish
slept.
up everything.
Right.
Agreed.
And so I know I'm not blaming you, but we need to get better at this.
Absolutely.
And the Mercer Group is classifying a compensation study.
Yes, sir.
I would only hope that you ask them, if I didn't tell you before, that they include private sector comparables.
Okay.
Because if it's not, it's a reinforcing thing. If
I
it's
think
just
we
going
have
to.
that, but I'll double check.
Okay.
Have we got, sorry, have you got the numbers? Do we know where we are, what we're short?
Yes.
Because we're running out of
Yes.
time.
We-
What are we
we're
short?
balanced.
$83,000 for mast. That's the last thing I have.
I would like to propose that they can do this in stages, and I would very much like to support the kids and the initiative, and we've all gotten a lot of emails. However, I think that's a tremendous amount of money.
Yes.
And I think also it's a little bit of putting the cart before the horse
So what are you
again.
proposing? What do you?
So
what do
I
you
would
want?
like to propose that we reduce that to 40,000, and that because I've been told that they can actually do half of the roof. I think we can find out if their analysis and the savings are accurate.
Let me tell you how I feel.
Okay.
I think it is an extraordinary good feeling on the way they've been involved in their emails that they send and all of that stuff. And all that energy we should have channeled through our youth council and do it in Key Biscayne. I really do draw a geographical line about where I spend money outside of the village council. Now, we had a master agreement, which is unusual because we drew some benefits. But This is a slippery slope. How about those who go to Coral Gables? And how about those who go to the junior high in Coconut Grove? They're going to come up with a project. The school board has a budget. We pay taxes for the school board. This is going to be a bad precedent.
Just the distinction.
I would challenge him. What I was going to do if we had opportunity is that I would hope, and I would be willing to do 83,000 if they do a similar project in consultation with the manager and Todd to do it in our park, physically in our park, in our community.
Well, technically, we do have use of the mast field, which is why they're considering it. And so, Councilmember Moss?
Just something, I mean, their presentation, I think we need to sit down and get a little bit better analysis of it, because my understanding is solar panels, and then there's some battery backup. But it can't be battery backup. Battery has to be powering it, because what we're powering are lights at nighttime, which are not collecting any energy to power the lights. So the batteries are going to have to power the lights no matter what, right? So we need to make sure we clarify with what they have and what they want. Second, budgeting purposes, we can put, again, 40,000, 80,000, whatever we want, towards solar energy. And then when the ask comes, they will have to come back to us, and we will have to look at it and approve it.
It is, so I think isn't it 40?
Yeah, it's not mass solar, but it's just solar energy.
Solar, and it's 40,000.
And we can decide how we want to do that when it comes in front of us.
I'll make a motion to
Second.
reduce it to 40 and keep it as a solar energy where we have to have a presentation back.
Great, okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Okay. What do we have? What's the number?
Okay, so we reduced solar energy down to
40.
40, and the balancing number comes from working capital. We were at 415,000.
This is just.
Chad, do you need us to untable the millage now?
I have to in a minute.
Yeah. Are you done with the budget?
I think so.
Yeah, either way, you're at the 3195. Right now, this is the balancing number it's reduced the working capital allocation from 580. We're just calculating the difference, but you're at the 3195.
I'll take a motion to
No, hold on, I want to be
untable.
clear. So we are now taking how much out of working capital?
370,000 about.
And how much did we have prior to that?
508.
So we now have working capital of about $130,000?
No, so you were at 5 million before.
Okay, 5.
And then now you're less than 370.
Okay.
That's at 370. And if we want to replenish our working capital and make sure that we're not dropping too low for our bond rating, we may want to keep the millage
We're at 3195.
at the 3195. Yep.
No, millage and max.
Oh, it's already is max no matter what. Okay.
Currently maxed.
All right. So I move to untable the millage.
I apologize. I
Wait.
need a motion to table the order.
Motion to table the ordinance.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Motion to untable the
Second.
millage.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Let me just read the
Discussion.
statement, so that the final.
First, we have to do the budget and then the millage?
First the millage, then the budget.
Yep.
The final millage rate for the Village of Key Biscayne for the fiscal year commencing October 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2020, be and hereby fixed at the rate of 3.195 mils, which is $3.20 per $1,000 of assessed value, property value within the Village of Key Biscayne, that the rollback rate is 3.1580 mils, and the final millage rate is 3.195 mils, which is 1.17% over the rollback rate.
Move.
Second.
Question.
Shoot.
I have here from my notes, correct me, it's just it's been a lot of numbers. Last year was 3.10.
Correct.
Correct.
We're proposing 3.195.
Right.
Somewhere in your memo, the manager's memo, you had 3.1603.
Correct.
So which are you recommending?
So my recommendation coming in and the data we had provided was at the 31603. Based on the changes that took place during this meeting, you're now at 3195.
So the original, but we broke down the budget and yet we have to increase did we bring down the total number of the budget?
No, we pushed it up.
Yeah, went up.
Well, we did bring down the amount we're taking out of working capital.
Yeah.
We made a decision to draw down less reserves.
Right. But at the
And
end of the day, we have a budget
So
about the
our
same,
tax
35.
collection stays flat.
Okay. I'll have another suggestion. Okay, so it's, you in essence amend or are forced to amend by the numbers, the 3.1603 to 3.195.
Correct.
Okay.
If I may, can I do a roll call on the 3.195 millage? Councilmember Laredo,
Yes.
Councilmember London is on the chamber. Vice Mayor McCormick,
Yes.
Councilmember Moss,
Yes.
Councilmember Petros,
Yes.
Councilmember Segurola,
Yes.
and Mayor Davey.
Yes.
Motion carries. Now, if I may have a,
Motion to
Remove
from the table, motion?
Second. That was a nice motion.
all those in favor?
What's that? Where?
We're bringing the,
Just on tabling the
ordinance
budget.
back
Bringing
off
it
the
back.
table so we can
The
talk.
budget.
On the budget,
So we can
okay.
approve the budget. as
All those in
amended.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Move to
To
pass
move the budget?
Move the budget as.
I would like to make a suggestion. We have to send a signal to our taxpayers and residents about reduction, and we haven't seen it. The numbers has gone up. And I would suggest, since our excess value has dropped for about 3%.
I'm sorry,
No.
we just need a motion to accept.
Oh, motion to extend for 4 more minutes, but then that's it.
My motion would be to
Second.
reduce the budget.
All those in
Aye.
favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
No.
Based on the drop in assessed value, that we use 3% and do a 3% cut on the budget across the board.
This budget?
Yes,
How are we going to do that?
just do it. 3%, take it and drop it 3% across the board.
Is there a second for the motion? Okay, having none, the motion fails.
If I may then proceed to the roll call on the budget ordinance. Vice Mayor McCormick,
Yes.
What are we voting on?
the budget
As
at
amended tonight.
3.195.
Jenny, can you just, who was the, who made the motion, who seconded it?
He made
No
the
one
motion.
seconded.
Oh, I'll take it.
I'm
Oh, I
sorry.
made the motion
For the budget ordinance,
And I
I
second it.
had the mayor and Councilmember Moss.
Councilmember Moss, your vote on the ordinance.
Yes. Oh, I didn't hear my name.
Councilmember Petros,
Yes.
Councilmember Segurola,
Yes.
Mayor Davey,
Yes.
Councilmember Laredo. I apologize.
I guess I have no option but to vote no, because I want to have a reduction. I hate to do that, but I didn't.
The ordinance is adopted on second reading.
We're going to be much better next year, folks. This is, I'm not proud of this work product. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.